Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
Well,
forgot to turn on the cameras.
Good morning and hello, kids. We do this all the time and we do all our own stunts. Welcome to the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Friday. Yes, thank God I'm Fly Day. December 15th, 2023, and it is going to be a very nice day here at the Beaver Lodge. Actually, I'm seeing the sunrise a little bit and some beautiful colors in the sky. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and you maybe noticed the new music. Probably won't be our permanent music, but it seems that now that we've hit 500 on YouTube, we can't use some of the royalty-free music that we were using in order to access the monetization elements. So we're going to be replacing it for a while, but we also have a couple of friends who have agreed to compose something for us. So you might hear some different stuff over the next while, but we will be having a new theme music for you very soon. That will be generously offered to us by friends who love us very much and for which we are very, very, very grateful. We have a great show for you today. Something I've been very excited about for a very long time, something that you have been asking for, and I already see it in the chat, hashtag Laura Babcock Day. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have to. It's not a mystery because we've been very happy about this. But before we go any further, the most important thing we do on every show is ask Mr. Grizzly, how are you doing today? And how's your mental health today, sir?
Well, good morning, Mr. Beaver. My mental health, I think we're good.
Yes.
Now, I went to bed. I fell asleep on the couch last night, somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The week had caught up with me. It had been a very, very busy week. Fell asleep around that time, woke up at 10 after 9 on the couch. I thought it was like 2 a.m. I looked at the clock. I go, 9:10. Oh, I'm going to bed. This is stupid. So I woke up at 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when the secondary alarm went off at 6, I'm like, okay, I'll get out of bed now. So yeah, I think I'm doing good, actually. I think I'm doing real good. But yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. Hopefully we get some sunshine today. I desperately need some sunshine because I've had none.
Yes.
I've literally been locked in the office the last few days trying to get things done for big meetings. And despite the technological challenges, things did eventually come around. But wow, It was a
Good
stressful
stuff.
couple of days. Yeah, it really
Well,
is.
that's a testament to your perseverance, because I know that I was hearing the other day that Mercury's in retrograde, and maybe that's why all the tech stuff wasn't working and inanimate objects were attacking me for the last 2 days.
Well, stranger things have happened. So
Uh,
it could very well be. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't we getting like major solar flares right now or sunspots? It's going to be a bad year for it, which will affect technology globally
mhm.
over the next several months as we're in some sort of 30-year cycle or something. I remember reading about it. Anyway, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a dumb construction worker who
You're not
got
dumb.
lucky.
You're not dumb. You're far from dumb, my friend. I got a good night's sleep because I went back to the sleep center and they changed my mask after it had attacked me.
So that's good.
But now I got the full thing, so I look like Darth Vader. Um, yeah. Let's just say it's not romantic in any way, shape, or form. But also, being half asleep half the day is also not conducive to
No, it's
romance.
not.
So
No.
I will take the sleep. Thank you very much.
You're not yourself when you're hungry, and you're not yourself when you're tired.
Uh-huh. And when you're tired, the Snickers won't help.
No.
Nope.
Well, did I correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I told you this story or not. On Wednesday evening, because I worked late, right? I
Mhm.
worked till 9:30, and there was a point in the evening where everybody was getting served dinner, and I was just working on some tech stuff, and I did not realize how hungry or tired I was when all of the dark thoughts start coming in. It's like everybody hates me. Nobody gives a damn about me. They don't care about the work that I've put in today. They're completely ignoring me. And then one of my colleagues is like, Paul, go eat food there, dinner. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I had a salad, then I had a steak, then I felt like myself again.
Mhm.
It's miraculous. It's like all those negative, bad, terrible anxiety thoughts
Mhm.
disappeared in a split second. I was like, everybody loves me again. No, I was just hungry.
Should be a first question if you haven't thoughts. Have you eaten yet?
Well, and have you eaten? Have you hydrated? And these are all legitimate things when it comes to your mental health, and it's really important that you pay attention to them. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
funny how that works. Anyway,
Funny how that works.
shall we?
Let's introduce
Shall we
our
bring in our special
guest.
guest? I'm
Yes.
super excited about this.
Yes. Now, she doesn't really need an introduction, but we will do it anyway. Laura Babcock is a communications and current affairs expert, and this rocks my boat because we're going to get. I'm going to be geeking out a little bit today, kids. Just so you know, she appears regularly on CTV News Channel and the iHeartRadio network. She also contributes op-eds to the Hamilton Spectator and hosts the amazing O Show. If you're not watching it, you need to watch it. Actually, take a second, go there, click like, share, subscribe there as well, because it's definitely worth your time. She was a television journalist and executive director at the Oakville Chamber of Commerce. She taught integrated marketing and communications at McMaster University. I can't say my alma mater because I only went there for about a month, but I did go there for a bit. And she's won
Yeah,
numerous
maybe.
awards for her work in community leadership. Um, she's fabulous. She's fierce. She's fantastic. And I am very, very happy to have her. And she also is, I believe, the owner and the creator of Power Group Communications. So if you
Yes,
need
she
some
is.
communication services, maybe you want to call Laura. Kids, Cubs, put your paws up and give a big round of applause for Laura Babcock.
That's awesome. I wish my teenagers heard that intro.
She just
Wait.
She just rocks. Your
You're too
mom
young to have
rocks.
teenagers.
Oh, I wish, my friend. No, I've got two.
It's like, kids, he goes, when you get old enough to start knowing your mother as a woman, not just as a mom, you're going to see she really rocks.
Aw,
Okay.
Yes.
Where do I send the check, guys? Where do I send it?
Postal box. No. We already have comments from the kids. For Kitlin M. Welcome, Laura. Love the O Show.
Oh, thank you so much. I've got Kathleen Wynn on this afternoon, and last time she was on, it made headlines. So,
Yeah.
you know what? Best thing about the O Show is I really don't prepare, and my guests have no idea what's coming. and she probably has a lot to say about Ford. Last time I had her on was the beginning of the Greenbelt scandal.
Oh, yeah.
Those clips went crazy. So I'm looking forward to asking Kathleen what she thinks about everything that's taken place since then.
It might be interesting to ask her as well what she thinks about suddenly being welcome in the Ontario Liberal Party again, because she was persona non grata for quite a while, but she did have a role at that convention. So
yeah, well, you know what? The party wasn't left in the greatest shape. And I was quite critical of her campaign. I didn't think it was a strong one back then. But you know what? Her voice of wisdom, and she did good things for the province. And as much as people might not have liked her, when they look back now, they're kind of like, ooh, it was nice to have an adult up in Queen's Park, right?
Yeah, it really was.
Yes.
It really was. I mean, the budget was balanced. We had the UBI program going. We had
basic
The
income
electric
pilot,
charging
clean
stations.
energy
Yes.
plans. You know, she made some mistakes and she came in on the gas plant scandal. But the fact of the matter is she left the province in a stable place with some good programs that got canceled as soon as Doug got in, like basic income and green energy. And now, of course, he's reversed himself on green energy because it was a colossal screw up out of spite. So I'm looking forward to a day when somebody's in that office that actually just wants to do the job instead of selling off the province for parts. I mean, that's what I'm going for, guys.
Please do. And my personal favorite was what she had done for post-secondary tuition, which also was gutted. I mean, when you consider, you know, that to run an economy, you need a health force that is educated and healthy. And she really did something to take care of the educated part. And
Well,
it's like,
and I just background, right? I mean, but I gotta say, like, I'm not for your audience. I'm not partisan. I'm not liberal. I'm not I'm not conservative. I'm progressive, and I like anyone who is making progress and approaching things with social justice in mind. You know, that understands that we're better, stronger together. You know, so I love the opening of the pod talking about mental health. That should be the conversation every day. I try to have it with my clients. Whatever else is on our agenda, do a mental health check-in. You know, we're only better together, and we've gone through a lot in Canada and in Ontario in the last few years. So, so kudos to you guys. I love that.
Excellent. Well, we do that with our guests as well, Laura. So how's your mental health today?
You know what? Better today than yesterday. Again, you know, awesome teenagers, but my husband's traveling for work, and it's a lot. It's a lot going on. That being said, when I wake up at 3 a.m. and those evil thoughts come in, the demons start their rampage, what I find is if I can't metacognitively shift it right away to positive thoughts, because I'm too tired, and to your point, you don't have a lot of high executive functioning when you're tired, I just throw in a podcast. In fact, I love listening to a shout out to the Bulwark podcast in the US, Charlie Sykes, and all the Republican strategists that he has on. And they're talking about how to stop autocracy down there, and they're ahead of us. So I use it as a little geek out until I fall back asleep. So.
Yeah, that's true. I've been wondering about that too. Why isn't there like a conservatives against the Conservative Party thing? Because there's nothing conservative genuinely about it anymore.
They never Trumpers, right? And they started, and just geeking out because you promised we could a little bit.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that they make so clear as they're fighting for the very life of their democracy, no hyperbole, against Trump resurrection in the fall, is that they said that it is the extreme right has established a fire hose of podcasts and shows that amplify one another and absolutely flood the zone with bullshit. Pardon the language early in the morning, guys.
We're allowed here.
Okay. I swear on the O show, as people know. But they flood the zone, and they've been doing it for years. It's been on right-wing radio. In fact, when Trump was starting his campaign, he had people source right-wing radio to see what the grievance points were and use that to craft his speech when he came down the escalator. So, I mean, they have a system that's set up. And what you saw with the Never Trumpers, all these Republican strategists left in 2016, and they set up all these shows to say, you know what, we're not going to just cede the ground. And what I'm concerned about in Canada is we're seeing a lot of those MAGA tactics in media. We're seeing organized pods. And if you watch me on Twitter, you know that I get hundreds of trolls an hour. We're not doing anything like that on the left to the extent, or the center to the extent that we need to. And the conservative movement in Canada hasn't yet figured out that unless they want to cede the ground to the far right, they've got to get in there themselves and use some of their skills and their networks. So, you know, shout out to all my conservative friends, start your podcasts and you know, take apart the Polyev garbage that is taking the country in the wrong direction.
Absolutely.
Well,
Good morning.
completely agree. Completely agree. You know, to that point, we have a lot of folks who watch this show who are progressive conservative.
Mhm.
And we have said time and time again, well, myself especially, I do not subscribe to any particular political party. I will never belong to one, ever.
Me too.
I vote in every election. I vote for the best candidate in my riding, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal. And the thing is, there's only so much we can do as citizens to stay engaged and to contribute to society. And what we need to do is elect good candidates in our ridings who are going to do the best for our community, not for me, for my community. How can we help everybody? Because if we help everybody, that's going to in turn make my life better. It's a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So
I agree.
I've voted for all major parties. I freely admit that. So when people come on and they call me, they say we're liberal shills who get paid by Justin Trudeau. I'm like, damn, I wish that were true.
I get that.
Because all I do is spend money to keep this going. We're not getting anything.
No, exactly. And you know what? Same with the O show, right? And the reason why is because it has to happen. It's good mental health, actually, to talk to people who are center progressive. And I used to run a chamber of commerce in Oakville. I used to be accused of being conservative all the time. I voted in all the different parties. My thing is leadership at the top, because I think the quality and the character of the leader under pressure. Policies and elections mean nothing, right? People campaign on poetry. They're supposed to govern on prose. A lot of it is BS. If the character is good, then in crisis and unforeseen circumstances, they'll make good value-based decisions. I like value-based leaders. That's how I go. Locally is important as well. But can I just pick on one little thing that you said?
Yes.
Even though we're in violent agreement, guys, I don't think we need to wait till the elections. And I think that's something that Canadians have been lulled into this cycle, right? And so a bunch of stuff happens in the first 2 years of a mandate, as we're seeing with Ford, and it's terrible. And then we get lulled, but we can't do anything about it until the 4 years are over, or the 5 years, whatever. And so then what we do is we kind of throw our hands up in the air in a sense of defeat. And as the election rolls around, money gets thrown at us. Our own money gets recycled back and thrown in our faces. And we buy it and we feel grateful, and we may or may not vote. I mean, we had the lowest election turnout in history in Ontario last time. The actual base of Doug Ford in reality is 18% of Ontario eligible voters. And look at the chaos in our province. So I don't think you have to wait. And on the Greenbelt, we did not wait. We got those lands back, even though we were told it couldn't happen. So one of the things that the extremes, and I'll talk extreme right in this case, one of their tactics is to make us feel like it's inevitable. Like they're so powerful that the march is so strong that there's nothing that can be done about it. And as soon as we disengage, back to Plato, we are doomed to be ruled by evil men or evil women. We have to make sure we engage. So I'm with you. I do this stuff for free too, because I'd rather do this than lay in my bed having nightmares.
Yep.
Well, this is the reason we started this was we started this. Mr. Beaver had a 10-year blog, and he said, "Would you be interested in a podcast?" And I was like, "Yes."
Awesome.
It's it's the least we can do to get out the truth to the most people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people, like I said, people are being lied to daily, and they go unanswered. Their feet are never held to the fire. And that just disturbs me. Like I say it all the time, and I'll say it again. I'm exasperated all the damn time.
And what you say, Laura, is correct, because my blog, I started it in at the time where Stephen Harper had gotten his majority.
Right.
And I remember when that happened, they had for about 2 days, it's like, that's it. I'm done.
Right.
I'm checking out the next 4 years. That's it. I just can't. And about 2 weeks later, it's like, nah, I can't do that.
Right. You gotta
I just can't do that. One, I'm a bit of a political junkie. Two, I'm a bit of a PR nut. And even though I don't really work in PR anymore, I still like being informed. I can't break the habit of watching the news and so I think what can I do with this? And I thought, okay, I'll write a blog. And I really, really, really thought, because writing is more my thing, this is new. It was just written. My picture was nowhere. It was just my words. And then at first it's how about a podcast? Oh, wait a minute, putting my voice to my words? No. And then we did that for a while. And then, Mr. Grizzly goes, oh, now we need to do YouTube. It's like, whoa. I don't know if I want to put my face. Already I put my voice because I'm a bit of an introvert. And I know what the blowback is when you start putting your face to it, what you invite in. And I'm a pretty chill, even keel kind of guy. And I have my little world, and it's nice like it is, and I don't like having it disrupted. And I know I'm inviting this by putting my face out there. But what was coming, I mean, I saw what was coming, right? When people show you who they are, believe them. And I really believe Stephen Harper. I am not surprised that he's at the IDU now saying, hey, we need to get closer to Viktor Orban, because I saw it back then. And I thought, okay, well, I'll write, and people will think that my writing's amazing, and then I'll get invited to do some op-eds and stuff like that. And that never happened. And then a friend of mine who I was talking to said, oh, well, you should try podcast. I said, oh, nobody wants to hear ditzy old queen talk about politics. Well, it turns out they do. And here we are now, right? So what you say is true because, for example, in the United States, while we progressives were doing things like trying to raise a lot of money to have an ad buy on TV that would last a couple of weeks or whatnot and hope they would turn around and say, hey, there's this abandoned radio station somewhere here in Arkansas we could buy for $300,000 and we can pump this into the ears of people 24/7.
Right.
It's like,
game recognizes game, right? Like I appreciate and I want to learn from them, because they knew how to do it. They got the jump on all of us. You know, I it wasn't in my bio, I don't think, but I started my career as a journalist for CBC Television and did that for a while, and then started my own company and ran the chamber and stuff. But I always had a TV show on local cable. So for 20 plus years, I had different iterations of the O Show. But I would talk to people. In this case, it was in Hamilton, and I would do national TV and stuff as well. But my show was always talking about local politics. And when I started to see just how scandal plagued our local council was, and just how much power they had accrued, and how the system was set up, how they would play to the donor base and to the voting base, and it was just unfair. And you could not beat an incumbent in this town. They were getting decades of power. And there was corruption. People would have heard of Sewergate, the 220 billion liters of raw sewage leaked. They would have heard about all these big scandals in Hamilton. So I actually took my show off cable onto YouTube, because I knew that on cable, I wasn't going to have the reach. I wasn't going to be able to swear. And sometimes you need to. And I wasn't going to be able to talk to people. And then when the Greenbelt hit, you know, our audience grew nationally for the show. But you know, at times, to your point earlier, Mr. Grizzly, when you were saying no one loves me, when you were talking into a hole of a laptop camera or you know, an iPhone or whatever else it is these days, or a camera, it's hard to believe that people care, that people need to hear it. And we are so much more inclined as humans to share negative feedback than we are positive. You know, and think about how many times you've heard a great show and you've been like, oh, I'm going to comment, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to find them on Twitter, and then you don't. Right. And so many of us are kind of sometimes just pushing into this black hole, but that's not true. There is a huge audience growing in this country. There is a network, the tissue. I see it getting stronger all the time. The fact that we're talking this morning, I'm doing Dean's show next week. I mean, I do a Charles show. Like we're all saying, hey, wait a second. This voice that has been reliant on mainstream media. And let's be honest, that's what it was reliant on. That mainstream media was going to do the heavy lifting, do the reporting. When I was a CBC journalist, I'd put my stuff through the lawyers, all that stuff. We were counting on them to, you know, warn us, inform us from any political point of view, hopefully non-biased, but we were counting on them to do the heavy lifting. And then they got really eviscerated by cuts. They are emaciated. They can't do it.
Right.
One of the things that I try to do on my Twitter feed is, and on the O Show, is to elevate the work of journalists.
Right.
For those who,
there's some great ones out
there. Yeah, there's great ones, but they are a dying breed. And if we think for 1 second that doesn't serve the interests of the pre-established disinformation networks, we're crazy. So, you know, for all of us, free or not free, and to all your great sponsors out there, Like we're doing this because it's necessary. We are losing the people that we counted on to do it before. And that we should be alarmed. Journalism schools are shutting down in the GTA.
Right.
Yes.
Do you know how hard I fought to get into journalism class? Like how hard it was. I went after university and like the placement rate was 2% out of my program. That's how tough it was back then.
Yeah.
And now the schools can't even get students because it's a dying structure. So I just put that out there for your audience, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing this for shits and giggles. We're doing this because we have a country that requires conversation rationally about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, our theme is because democracy is something that you do, and it's sort of like, hey, I have these skills.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it out there.
Use
And
it.
I know what you mean when you say when you feel like you're screaming into a wind tunnel because you don't know. And that's the wonderful thing about podcasting, at least, is that you get the chat and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I am not alone.
Yeah, right.
Right? Mr. Grizzly, you were going to say something?
Well, the way you go on about how difficult it was at the time to get into journalism school and then get a placement after that. And here, I live in Centertown, Ottawa, Canada's capital, where one of, the claim to fame for Carleton University for decades was it was one of the best journalism schools in the country. And it's still there, but it's not the bright shining light on the hill that it once was, which is a crying shame.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yep.
And I'll say it. It's true. Corporate interests are looking at the costs, the bottom line. And if they can aggregate news, if they can buy news feeds, if they can get rid of journalists, if they can use AI, they're going to do it. I have no problem with people making money, but we have to understand as a country, we only succeed if we have these. I consider journalism as important as public health care, right? It is a safety net that our country needs. And one of the things that I've been happy to see, I've been very critical of the Trudeau government, of their poor comms. The last 2 years, their communication just terribly sideways. Not just were they tone deaf, but they didn't seem to have any hustle or any effort. And they gave a 20-point lead to a guy whose only skill is sloganeering. And it's a powerful skill in propagandist populism, march of autocracy. That is the skill set. So as a PR person who builds narratives and understands them, I've been watching this going, when are you going to freaking fight back? Or even just inform, or even just engage.
Right.
So I'm glad to see Trudeau's got a new guy who apparently knows what he's doing. Glad to see the housing minister actually gets it. Short videos to explain what you're doing helps. And I don't know if you guys saw, I think I saw it from Charles Adler's Twitter this morning, but I don't know if you guys saw Karina Gold, the millennial minister.
Yes.
I did a documentary with her a couple of years ago because she was the first millennial minister in Ottawa. And she just did the mom treatment on Polyev in a way that every mom out there or every kid is like, oh, damn. She's like, I'm sick of your tantrums, taking time out. I won't call you a child because that's an insult to Canadian children. Like, I'm watching her going, where did the fire come from? I love it.
Oh, that we love Karina Gold. We are big fans.
Absolutely.
I mean, not only the first millennial, but the first and second person to actually give birth while member of parliament.
Right.
Right. So she's about to go on maternity leave very soon again.
It's fresh. It's fresh, Mom.
Yes, exactly. It's like, and she's doing this while being very pregnant.
Yes, I love
very
it.
pregnant.
Love it.
I'm glad you mentioned that bit about the new communications. I'm going to take a little circuit to get there.
Just before you get there, can I just make one comment about
please.
Gold and pregnancy? So you know how you said, she's doing this very, very pregnant. I remember one time I was very, very pregnant and I was doing a television show, and this male panelist who was, let's just say, not a nice man, turned to me and he goes, oh, you're pregnant. Are you sure you can handle a panel with me? And I said, there's two of me, buddy. Watch out. Karina's got extra power going, dude.
Just wait until it kicks.
There was a woman I came across on TikTok who said, a man that she was working with said, you need to grow a pair of balls. You just don't have the balls to do this. She goes, I have 3 sons. I've grown 3 pairs of balls.
I love it.
Go fuck yourself.
I'm so stealing that.
Oh, nice.
It's good. And I'm like, she literally has grown 3 pairs of balls. So
one last pregnancy story. I was in this boardroom, fancy boardroom, big charity thing board I was on. And the host or the chair was like, who wants to chair next year? And I'm like, I'll do it. Sure, I'd love to. And he looks at my stomach because I was like 6 months pregnant or something. And he goes, are you sure you'll be able to? And I'm like, why? Am I going to have some sort of an event? Is brain damage in my future? Am I not going to be able to attend? I kept looking at him going, I'm not sure I understand. Like, what would be the concern? And there was a cabinet minister across the table who burst out laughing because she knew I wasn't going to let it go until he said, well, you're pregnant, right? Just for the sake of the room. So I'm just saying, Karina, more power to you, girl.
Yeah. It's amazing how much that works. I don't get it. Can you explain why that? What did you mean by that?
What is it that you're worried about me?
I don't get the joke. Why is that funny?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I went on a tangent.
No. We do that a lot here. Don't worry. I wanted to because I want to geek out a little bit on PR before we get into sort of Ontario stuff, because you mentioned that Prime Minister Trudeau has a new PR team, and we wanted to get into that. You were mentioning earlier about flooding the zone with bullshit and the other side having a whole network. And I'm glad you said that, because yesterday I was at the Grand doing my favorite holiday tradition, which is watching the Holly Cole Christmas show.
Nice.
She's amazing. She's amazing. Love it. And during the intermission, I saw a tweet, and I'm not going to say the tweet broke me, but if you could break me, this probably would be it. It was literally the dumbest, but the most, like, what the F? Like, can we get a wellness check on this guy? Tweet I have ever seen.
Right.
It's from our favorite crybaby Caillou.
Nazi Caillou.
Kian Bexty. Oh, I guess I should blow that up a little more. On my screen, it's huge, but...
Yeah, not here.
All right. There we go. Would you read it, Mr. Chrisley?
Fire season next year will be worse than ever. Arson is way up. It is extremely dry, and Justin Trudeau and the feds are intentionally under-preparing for it. They think that by making North America choke on smoke, they can win the next election on a carbon tax. It is a psyop.
Wow.
Okay.
Messed up shit.
There is so much wrong with that Laura, what's your reaction? Because, like, come on.
Well, my reaction is that we are in full-blown conspiracy territory now. And I don't care how you label it, TrueAnon, MAGA, whatever else. Anything that happens organically because of climate change, because of just natural things that happen in society, is going to be used as some sort of a politically engineered agenda. You know, and so seeing that, I have seen that kind of stuff in the US. You know, Trump had some stupid stuff around the fire season when he visited California. There's been
the forest.
Yeah, there's been dumb stuff about fires coming up through MAGA for a few years. We had people fighting back with the fire season last year, saying it was just arson and everybody else was lying, the same kind of vax crowd garbage, right? So a denial of basic fact and truth and science is baked into the cake and all this stuff. So I don't lose it when I see stuff like that. I just look at it and I say, okay, so obviously, what is the agenda? You know, right. What is the audience? What is it in this particular structure or framing? And I am geeking out here that is particularly appealing, right? So rather than look at that and go, oh my God, it's such garbage and crap and lies, I look at it and say, why is this one getting the pickup? What is this? So in that one, if I had to do the analysis, there is a fear that every Canadian has now about forest fires, about fire season. We are afraid. We saw a town implode a few years ago, vaporize. You know, we have seen tremendously terrifying trying to flee fire scenes. We've seen towns destroyed. I lived up in Thompson, Manitoba at one time. You know, not when you get up north like that, you are in the middle of the woods, and it can be extremely scary. We saw New York City engulfed by our hellscape of fire, right? And what we contributed. I mean, we were mentioned at COP, the recent climate thing in Dubai by the Prince Charles, or King Charles, I believe it was. I mean, we have a huge problem in Canada. So I think there's fear. And where there is fear, People want a solution to the fear. Our brain naturally craves patterns and solutions to our fears. So what does that tweet tell me? Why is it successful? Because it takes a fear and it says that this fear is engineered. This fear is engineered by this political party. So take your fear and add it to your hate or your distrust of this individual. It's quite clever, right? And
Right.
so if you want to make people, fear is a tremendous appeal in marketing. I used to teach marketing. So what they're doing is they're taking the fear of Canadians and they're saying, rather than fear the fire season, rather than, feel guilty about maybe not supporting any kind of climate mitigation strategies, let's just blame it on them. So all of that fear and all of that guilt can just be pushed into anger, right? And that's very, very clever. So, whoever this Nazi is or whoever this person is you call the Nazi, I don't know who they are. And I don't want to judge them as a Nazi if they're not. I think you use that term.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know, but I don't use that term lightly.
No, I understand.
But that ability to select societal fears and pain points, and then to be able to mitigate that rather than activate that for good change, to mitigate that and push it into anger and resentment is what we are seeing as a strategy. And so when you see those things, see it for what it is. And say, you know what, if you're concerned about fire season, which I think every Canadian should be, there are things we can do about it that have nothing to do with X, Y, and Z. And I usually find when there's someone puts out a tweet like that, and especially if they tag me, and I think they have enough traction on the tweet, I will actually engage in that a little bit. And sometimes what you'll find is maybe it's only 5% of the respondents who are on the rah, Trudeau wants to start fires bandwagon goes, oh, you know what? Actually, that makes more sense, right? So even if it's a little squishy middle, right? We're fighting. So don't just see it and freak out. See it, analyze it, respond to it, try to do it without, I try not to name call. I try not to body shame or name call. And I try to deconstruct what's successful about that messaging strategy. And then if I can provide an alternative view or at least deconstruct it on an evidence-based place, and you'll get some people who are like, okay, I am afraid about fire, but I would rather do something to stop it than just get angry at Trudeau. Does that make sense? Sorry for the 5-minute answer.
No, that's it, because that's the political and media literacy part that we want to do, because I'm looking at that and it's like, oh, you're so close. The forest is dry. Why is the forest dry?
Right. But you see, that's what they did on purpose, though, and that's the point, is they got so close so that it seems true, right? If it was just Trudeau's trying to burn down our forests so that, he gets reelected, people would say, that's dumb. But when you come this close and put in a little bit of fact, a little bit of science, and then that's what disinformation is, right? It's not flat out bullshit. It sounds right, could be true. I know some very intelligent people who, when I get in a conversation with them about politics, they come right up to that line of things that they believe. And I'll sit there and say, where'd you hear that? That's really interesting. So do you think that that's actually how it is, or do you think it's close to how it is? And they're like, oh, I don't know, it just sounded right. And I'm like, okay, well, let's deconstruct it a little, so that's the trick, right? You get close, and then you flip it to your political agenda, and it's propaganda. That's how it works, and it's used by every party. We're sitting here saying, please, Trudeau, get out more messaging, get more stuff out there. But what I always look for, and I expect from any leader I'm going to vote for, is that it's not close to the truth. It is the
truth.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Be sexy about how you tell me about it. Be fast in your rapid response. Get on the game and hustle your ass off, Trudeau, or anybody else, Jagmeet or anybody else, but make it true. And if Polyev was telling the truth, I would be a lot less harsh on his juggernaut communication strategy. But there's so much bullshit in it that people think
it's ridiculous.
And people feel. I mean, one last thing on this, guys, but from 25 years of doing call-in shows and local call-in shows, people don't engage in politics, in my experience, for the main reason, not that they're lazy, not that they're bored, not that they're too busy, but they don't feel that they have enough understanding of the landscape or of the rules of the game. They don't want to sound stupid, right? And they don't want to look stupid. That's what I find. So if you can give a little bit of information, if you can open the door a bit, if you can give people, that sounds like it makes sense. However, here's what really is happening, what we really need to do about it. People are kind of like, oh, somebody doesn't think I'm not worth engaging. Somebody wants to help me engage, help me get in the door, right?
Right.
So that's so important. We can't talk above people. We can't talk, game theory so much that people are like, well, where are the rules to this game? I can't engage, so I'm out. We have to help people understand politics is the business of people. You're a person. This is your business. Don't stay on the sidelines, right? Get right in the game.
Yep. And I like that you say that it's clever, because this is the thing that I try to get people to understand. It's like, oh my God, he's acting so stupid. Oh, they're so dumb. It's not dumb. It's a deliberate strategy. It's like, the forest is dry. Let's not ask why the forest is dry. Let's ask why, whose fault this is. And by starting with, right, there's more arson than ever.
Yeah.
No, it's not there's more arson than ever. There are more wildfires than ever. It's the preemptive framing right there. I'm a big fan of George Lakoff, right, the linguist that that tells you these strategies. It's preemptive framing. Pardon?
We are going geek deep. I love it.
Oh yeah, but it's preemptive framing, right? We start talking about arson.
Yes.
Right. Not that. And then we connect it to the fires, and then we say the forest is dry, and then we say, right, this is to get you to buy into climate change stuff, and then add it with the full conspiracy, go full Q. It's a psyops. Not only is the government setting the fires, but they're doing this to psychologically. The levels of dishonesty and maliciousness. That's the thing. There's dishonesty, right? Like, did you do this? No, I didn't. It was Johnny, like this. But then there's like the malicious. This one, it's really malicious. Like, so who wants you to believe that a government is actually setting fires on purpose to create smoke to choke you? Yeah. So that you will buy into climate. Like, the levels.
It's fear mongering, right? It's getting you deep. So what I find so fascinating is calling out a psyops when you're actually doing a psyops.
Yes.
So that's part of what makes it so bold, is that there's there's John Heilman in the U.S. I think is the first one who said everything that Trump says is either projection or deflection, right? Or projection or confession. So, when you look at that tweet right there, there's a confession on psyops that's happening, right? Like, this is a psyops tweet, but we're going to blame those guys on psyops. You go, oh, they do psyops? Thanks for protecting me. Like, it really is, it's malicious on that level. But I have to say, and I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, there is the moral value piece that, of course, I think all people of good nature and good heart have to hold on to. We can't give up on it. There is also the strategic piece called the dark arts, right? Public relations and politics is often called the dark arts. So there are certain people who just see those patterns. The linguist you mentioned sees the framing, look at things at the meta level all the time. Not everybody does that. We don't want everybody to do it, because the world would be miserable if everybody saw the world that way. But for the people who do it, and can do it, I try to do it on the side of angels, but I know how to do it. And if we don't call it out when we see it, then it's an incredible risk to the psychology and the voting patterns and the happiness of Canadians, right? When you're getting fear like that and you feel you can't fight it, why the hell get out of bed? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's what pisses me off about fascism and about authoritarianism and this garbage, is that it's trying to make you feel like you're crazy, which is why I love the Bulwark. He always says, you're not the crazy ones. He starts it, right? But it also says, you know what? Whatever values you believe to be universal and shared about compassion and helping somebody, those values no longer rule the day. So the world is cold and scary, and the people who feel that way are louder and prouder. So you might as well either join them or hide. And that is something we have to dispel, that mythology. There are more good people. There are more kind people. There are more people who want to mitigate climate change for our future generations. There are more people that want to help our neighbors out of homelessness, who want to end this housing crisis. There are more of us, right? And we cannot be pushed into silence. And we cannot believe that just doing good on our weekends or giving to charities is going to win this fight. We have to speak. We have to be seen to be doing good. We have to share that good is happening, and we have to call people to do good, right? If they don't, then I hate to say it, but these dark forces, and they are dark forces, win. So in the skill set of the dark arts, please, good people, use those. If you have them, use them.
Yep.
Right.
Well, to that, I think a large part of why fear motivates people, hate motivates people, along with mental health issues, which are being manipulated. So on this show, I'm very vocal about how I will not tolerate intolerance. I have zero room for that. And if you come in here as a hate-filled, homophobe, transphobe, we're booting you instantly. You're gone.
Good.
We will not let that be said here in this platform.
Yeah.
Now, I have a separate platform where I do a mental health ASMR chat once a week. I'll put the link in the chat, so if you want to click on it later and you're having trouble sleep, it's done in a very soothing voice.
Nice. Love it.
And on that show, I have said time and time again, anybody anywhere on planet Earth who is having a mental health challenge or issue and needs to be in a safe space community where they can listen to people talk openly about their challenges is welcome here. As long as you check your hatred, your transphobe, your religiosity, your whatever it is, leave your politics at the door. If you come in here with a problem and you want to talk about your mental health, you are welcome in that space. If you raise any political thing, you're gone. Because so much of the fear and hatred, I believe personally, is because people are manipulating those who have mental health issues, and they can clearly see it.
But how many
People aren't born to hate, and people aren't born angry.
You're right. And so many of us have mental health issues, though, right? Like I absolutely do. I had a full-on, almost nervous breakdown during COVID, just doing crisis management for months. I have a child who's on the spectrum. I have, 2 teenagers at a time in their lives where social connections are incredibly important. And I was working with clients 24/7, trying to manage their virtual world and their crisis, and all the new tools had to be created and everything else. And I'm a bit of I hate technology, and like what a way to have to enter technology, with a virtual gun to your head. Like you're all of a sudden your world is online and you got to switch up everything. I had a shingles breakout at 48 because of the stress. It was absolutely terrible. Get your shingles shot if you can afford it, but get it if you can at 50. But it's, so to your point, even people who might have thought for a long time they were tracking and their mental health was A-okay, which I don't believe anybody's is. It's just like physical health. We have our ups and downs. We all have, the spectrum of it. But the pandemic threw us into a psychological tailspin. And there is a reason why authoritarianism rises after pandemics. Look at it. It's literally like in a time chart. It's happened before. Because people are separated from one another. They're full of existential fear. They are now, isolated from their typical family friend networks. They're vulnerable. This pandemic gave us the sweet, sweet juice of the internet so everybody could find their own rabbit hole. It has done a tremendous amount to cause mental health crisis and to make us prone to fear-based appeals. And we have to fight that fear. It is really brutal. And I just got to give a shout out to the younger generations. For anyone else on here as a teenager or has them or a preteen, the stuff that they have had to go through between the pandemic and social media and TikTok and the wars. We got a hot war in Europe and a hot war in the Middle East. I mean, if you can get out of bed in the morning and not feel anxiety, good on you. But most of us have to battle anxiety to get through our days, so I love that you do that. And I think that it needs to be a conversation all the time. How's your mental health? Like get off the top. And now we can talk about how to fight these forces of fear and these forces of, that just want to take our fear and translate it into their gains. And I hate that, right? I hate exploitation. So I'm with you. I won't have anyone on the O Show. People are like, oh, it's not fair, Laura. You don't put the other side on the O Show. I go, what other side? The side of bigotry and hate?
It's not a side.
It's not a side. It's a terrible thing. I'm not gonna pour garbage on my computer any more than I'm gonna have garbage on my platform.
Yes, we've welcomed actual progressive conservatives, people that actually like that's a perspective. That's a side. Like that's the government is setting fires in order to choke. That's not a side. No. That is a psyop. So like that should not be platformed. And what you mentioned about the pandemic is right, because now with technology, what has happened is because we were all alone, it was almost like, here,
absolutely,
right in my vein, give me my fix right there of whatever it is, right? We just had, these people had instant access to people that were already, when we talk about people, cults and whatnot, like they tried to isolate people from their friends and their families. Well, COVID did that already. like this. So now let me whisper sweet nothings, literally nothings, in
Yeah.
your ear,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Come to me, my children. Yeah,
And I got to be honest, I was raised in kind of a quasi cult, so I have like a high alarm radar for that kind of manipulation.
right.
It took me years and years to get undoctrinated, and so whenever I see the tentacles of doctrination and how they it's always whether you're in an abusive relationship or whether you've been in a cult-like environment, it's always isolation. It's always fear, right? It's always getting to a point where you alone can't depend on your own thinking, your own process, and your own values, and so you become dependent on the approval of another, and then you are completely vulnerable to their abuse, right? So this stuff is serious. It's not just a tweet about fire; it's about making people feel terrible, and we have to stand up against it. We have to, for the sake of the goodness of Canada, and I don't mean that left, right, or center. I just mean the goodness of Canada. We have to stand up for it and for our mental health. It's all tied together.
Mhm.
I love talking to you guys. You go deep over coffee, man.
Thanks. When you said that thing about everything's a projection or a confession,
Yes.
my take on that is, because it seems to be coming from one side of the spectrum, is if a conservative is complaining about it, it's because they've already done it, are in the process of doing it, or have plans to do it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, look at the biggest homophobes. when I think back through the last 20 years in the U.S. Congress, the ones who were screaming the most against equality were the ones who were often, part of that world, but couldn't just accept who they were and pushed against and the hate. So I often look at it and I say, you know what? Why are you fighting so strongly about this? Like, what is, like, I always go to motive. What is the motive behind this?
And who benefits?
And who benefits, right?
The two questions.
Do that. The two questions in PR,
Right. Right.
Well,
what's the motive and who's benefiting, and
Right.
hopefully the motive is good and the benefit goes to a good cause. But that you got to fight for that. That doesn't happen easily.
Yeah. Now with sorry.
well,
Okay.
I was going to say, when you talk about how Republicans who have been in the closet and then they attack
Right.
people in the LGBTQ community. There was a former premier in Alberta who is so far in the closet he can't find the handle door.
Mhm.
This is not speculation. You know what? I'm not going to wade into the waters on that, but we know who I'm talking about. It's not a secret. It's an open secret. And yet that individual, when he went to school in San Francisco, went out of his way to prevent dying AIDS patients being with their partner and bragged about it. And this is somebody, again, like you said, that they're often a part of the community, but apart from the community and hurting the community. And I cannot understand how a person can wrap their mind around
All
that.
I can say is I was raised by a fundamentalist Baptist evangelical pastor with a lot of issues, right? And the community we were in was viciously judgmental like that. Not all
Mhm.
people, but I'm sure people of good intent in every group, but my experience as a child was one of seeing exactly what causes that kind of behavior, that kind of condemnation, that kind of inhumanity. It's from my perspective, it comes from a deep-seated insecurity that says that,
yes.
you know what, if I can tear down others, if I can use religion and whatever, to have a higher vantage point, if I can get above them, if I can have a higher ground advantage, then I don't feel so crappy about myself. And so that, whether it's that kind of hate promotion with the LGBTQ, whether or not it's like, I mean, why is this judge trying to keep this woman in the US from being able to deliver a dead baby? What is in that person's life and heart that makes them feel so desperate for control that they would abuse power in such an inhumane way?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's where it comes from, right? It's absolute deep-seated insecurity. The more people try to push others down, the weaker they are. And that's why I stand up to them, because I'm not afraid of a bully. Like the more you pound your chest and threaten me, the more I'm like, yeah, how weak are you? Yeah, how
Exactly. And I see that thing that's happening in the States right now. And because things rhyme, the first place my mind went to was Terry Schiavo.
Yeah.
It was made, but all these small governments take government out of your life. They're all up in your grill, though, eh?
Right.
When you make a decision about your life all of a sudden that they don't agree with. I mean,
But authoritarianism is the opposite of Reagan's line about, small government, right? The conservative line of small government. It's the opposite. It is the absolute opposite. And I heard a horrible, horrible story this morning on the news on the BBC about how in Afghanistan now, abused women they shut down all the women's shelters for abused women, and they're putting them in prison for their protection. And since the Taliban came in and the economy crashed and everything else, the levels of abuse have gone through the roof in Afghanistan, and these women are being put in prison. Honestly, I'm going to cry if I talk about it anymore. I'm just saying that when we see what's happening with the extreme right in the US and in other authoritarian regimes around the world, it is about the crushing of rights. It is about total control over the population so that they can enrich themselves. Yep. And it is, we have to stand up against it. I will not tolerate one single hint of that bullshit from Polyev. Not even on the edges of it, not from Ford, not from when Ford got up at Ford Fest and started to make anti-trans allusions, I was like, what the, and Mike Schreiner, the head of the Green Party, was on my O show right after that, and he called it right out. And it's like, no, thank you. So let's not pretend everything is innocuous and a joke or close to the edge, but not what they mean. Mm-hmm. What they mean, they will take your rights. Yeah, they will take women's rights, and they will take the rights of the LGBTQ plus, because it's always the vulnerable and the trans people. Why are they going after trans and drag queens and everything else?
They think nobody cares enough about them to stand up about them, stand up for them.
How it works, right? And let's all remind ourselves of that poem that was done. First, they come for them because nobody stopped them or cared. Mm-hmm. Stood up. Yep. So when I hear that women who are abused are being put in prison, it's like that doesn't even make sense in a rational mind. Yep. But it makes sense in a fear-based, insecure, controlling mind to do that to women.
And we do have that discourse starting here, but here it's not with women. Here it's with the homeless and with people that have addictions issues. The forced treatment. Oh, well, we're going to criminalize homelessness to the point, well, let's just put them in jail then, like this. At least they'll be. So, I mean, everywhere you go in the world, like this, whatever strategy is being used in one place, right, gets transposed to another place in the world. But the common denominator is that it's applied to people, quote, who don't matter. The HIV crisis was the same thing. In Eastern Europe, it was migrant workers and injection drug users. In the Caribbean, it was people from Haiti, right? Over here, it was gay people. But everywhere, sex trade workers. But everywhere you went, it was the people who did not matter in the relevant society where it was. And they were the ones that were being attacked. It's always the same play. It gets modified for different areas, different geography, but it's always the same play. There's one playbook, and they all download that playbook, and it's the same play. And then it just gets regionally modified for who's the people who don't matter in their whatever region.
You bully the people who are perceived as weak because society doesn't care for them, right? And I just have to tell you, if your listeners, your viewers here want to see it, Yelena Vermillion, who is a transgendered woman, and she is a porn star, and she is a fierce fighter for the rights of others. Like, she is one of my sheroes, right? She was at a Take Back the Night march carrying a banner for a group of I think it was Asian sex workers who are even more bullied than she is as a trans sex worker. And some guy ran up, and this is on camera, I have it on the O show, grabbed the banner and dragged Yelena, who must be, 120 pounds soaking wet. And dragged her down the street. And I'm watching this, and it's happening in Hamilton, a major city in Canada, not 2 months ago. And Yelena posted it and said, because I know the mainstream media is not going to, did you guys hear that story? Was it wall to wall where you are?
Nope. So this is the first time I'm hearing it. A
community leader dragged down the street of our main downtown street in Hamilton at a Take Back the Night march for 20 meters. She ended up having a concussion and all these injuries. And so I'm just saying, who's the voice of that? I mean, to her credit, she's got a huge platform on Twitter, and she's a star in her own right. But where was the conversation? Can you imagine if that happened to somebody who was perceived as being valued, like a young white girl, or or some college student from a good family? It would be like headline news. So I just bring that up, and there's a show on it. I think it's called the Rise of Hate in Canada. I might have called it that. And because there was also a counselor who's a gay man who was getting death threats for trying to help the homeless, to your point, right? They're both on the show talking about the cost of hate. So Hamilton is like one of the epicenters of hate in this country. Right. And the show has been on this file for, as you just triggered me with your mention of homelessness and the devaluation and substance users. We have to wake up. That kind of violence you'd think you'd only see in Russia just happened in Hamilton. And a city councilor I had on my show, as I said, who got death threats for just wanting to help a homeless shelter or like a tiny cabin thing. Did that make national news? Did you guys hear that? Because we had that on the O show, right? Right. Like, what the fuck? Pardon.
No, go ahead.
No, it's
this
fine.
is for adults.
Let it out.
We do a show for adults, for grown-ups.
So what the fuck are we letting happen in our country, Canada? Like what? Like, how are these stories less important than, with all due respect to the other shows that I do, I have to talk about a lot of stuff that I look at and I go, we just had a trans woman dragged down the street to take back the night. It doesn't make the morning panel. Like, why am I talking about airline travel when we have sometimes I have to sit back and go, I'll give CTV credit. Last night, they let me do a whole thing on Ford. but the thing is, it's
priorities, people.
But it was about the boots. It was about the free boots, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but that's the point. So I'm not saying this stuff to complain. I'm saying this stuff because it's happening in front of us. There are the wounds physically to show it. And who was this guy who thought it was funny to drag Yelena, to rip down that sign? Who was this guy? Like, who are his parents? Who are his friends? Who are the guys who are running along with him and like yakking it up?
Yeah. Who raised you?
Yeah. And how do we normalize that shit, guys? Honestly, how? It's heartbreaking.
They've stripped her of her humanity.
Right.
They don't see her as human anymore.
No.
The same way Skippy the Wonder Pigeon, Pierre Poilievre, sits in the House and says the Liberals were starting the wildfires in Alberta, and people swallow that hook, line, and sinker. The same way Skippy calls a strawberry box in Niagara a shack.
My first home was a strawberry box. Like,
I live in one.
Insane is that? And
I lived in many military camps.
I live in one right now.
Can we just talk about Pierre? And I know that this is bothering the Conservatives or his MAGA-esque, whatever the hell he's running, because of the hate that I've been getting on it in the last 48 hours. But can we just talk about the comments around Ukraine? To call it a faraway land? Like, it was actually someone from the Monk School, I think, a real think tank who responded to my tweet and said, he's echoing Chamberlain about Czechoslovakia or whatever. And I'm not that much of a Second World War historian, but somebody smarter than me put that reference in to my Twitter thread on it. You might, yes, technically it's far away. I was in Europe this summer, and Ukraine is a couple of hours even further from where I was in Europe. But that's the language is meant to devalue the fight against Putin. And if Pierre Poilievre doesn't know he's signaling Putin, let's be clear. Putin is watching. Putin referenced that horrible moment when the applause was given to that former SS soldier in the House of Commons when Zelensky was visiting. He referenced that in the last 24 hours. He's watching Canadian politics.
Yep,
it's not without it's to echo what the MAGA are saying in the US in our own parliament, to say, to diminish the fight of the Ukrainians, a hot war in Europe against a fascist. Like, what? Sorry, guys, I promise, my last fuck for the morning. What the fuck is that? And if every Canadian doesn't say, what are you doing? If this is just for your base. And he actually had a Conservative MP out of Toronto put out a thread. And one of the things in his thread was, words speak or actions speak louder than words. So I'm like, so are we not to take the words of your leader seriously then? So what is he doing? If his words can't be believed, what are we witnessing with that kind of language?
Yep.
I'm not going to go to what's in Poilievre's heart, but I do hope he has read a history book. I think he's a smart man. I think he knows what he's doing. And if he thinks it's okay to signal that to Putin when literally Ukrainians are fighting for their lives and fighting for our freedom, he's got to check himself. That's too far. Sorry.
A very dear friend of mine went to school with Pierre.
Yeah.
Or Jeff. And he said he is exactly who he represents himself to be in Parliament. He goes, "No, that's not an act. That is exactly who he is. A smarmy, whiny little punk. That is exactly who he is. He's been like that his entire life. So it's not an act with him. That's genuinely who he is. And he believes his own bullshit.
Yeah. Well,
He's a total narcissist.
yeah, and don't tell me then that you stand up against the forces of autocracy in this world if you're going to signal that. They could have said, we absolutely will find a way to fund Ukraine. They are a country we care deeply about. And as Canadians who want to protect global democracy, it is a fight we need to be in. We have issues, however, with the carbon tax. And we have issues with how it's framed within that trade agreement with the Ukraine. And so we are going to fight for our domestic issues, but never, never, ever wavering on support for Ukraine against Putin. I mean, if you want to be a serious leader and still get rid of the carbon tax because that's your main platform, go for it. But how dare you place into the minds of Canadians the sense that we don't have to care about these people. I mean, I lived in Winnipeg for 6 years. There's a lot of Ukrainians who went there, settled that god-awful, no offense, Winnipeg, but your weather. On the coldest, most miserable days, I thought about the people who were there before electricity, these brave people. So what are we, like, how can we as a country just laugh that off? When he says stuff like that, every single one of us should get right up in the face of every MP and say, it's not about the carbon tax. It's about Putin and a hot war in Europe and the democracy and the freedom of millions of people and another world war potentially. Yeah. So get your head straight and you talk to your leader and say, any more of that shit, right? Like, why is Polyev dropped? Why is there a 10-point swing in the polls in the last week? Yep. That was before the Ukrainian comment. That was just when he was gloating about the 600 CBC layoffs, jobs, right? And Canadian families. That was when he was kind of excited about that terror thing on the border. That was just a car crash, right? Like, I don't know why Canadians are getting turned off to this guy, but all I'm saying is I want to see the polling after that Ukraine comment.
Me too. Me too. And the no vote-a-thon and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, oh my God, maybe that was it. Yeah.
And the thing,
do you remember? Go ahead, sir.
The thing that you're mentioning about the carbon tax thing is the thing that surprises me, or not surprises me because nothing surprises me with it. But the thing that shocks me is that you are literally putting your personal fetish partisan issue ahead of the concept, the principle of territorial sovereignty when we are the meat in a Russia-US sandwich. I guess, and all we have is a battalion of wild boars, lacrosse sticks, and curling brooms. I mean,
don't forget the geese,
cobra chickens. Seriously, like this, you really are going to try to set policy, carbon tax policy in Ukraine, trying to hobble their accession to the EU for a couple of personal partisan points here?
Of course,
what the heck is that about? Like, and the reason I'm mentioning this because I'm trying to move us to something to a place here is that you do PR, and back in the day, they used to call us spin doctors, and some people looked negatively upon that. Right now, back in the day when I was a spin doctor, a proud spin doctor, I had one rule. It's like, do not lie.
Right. Of course.
You could say, look at this and try to soft talk that or like this, but do not lie. I remember I was working on something once and we asked people to do stuff over the course of the year. And then we got the reports back on what they had done and they hadn't done much. And I went to my boss and I said, okay, this is really thin. So do I honestly say, hey, this is thin and you guys need to get your acts together? Or do I say, well, here are the 3 or 4 things that we done and hope no one notices? I just said, do this are the 3 or 4 things we done and hope no one notices. Okay, but I did not lie.
Right.
I did not say these 3 or 4 things are absolutely fantastic and they revolutionized because all the time we did this, and hope that nobody would notice. Yes? Yeah, so what's the difference to you between the art of spin doctoring and what's going on now?
It has to be defensible. I'll tell my clients, if you want to say that, where's the defense to that? Show me how that is a statement that we can make in good conscience. Because I'm very good with words, as we all should be who have these kind of gigs. And so that is a skill set, you know. That's why I love playing Trivial Pursuit. The answer is always in the question if you know language and etymology, right?
Jeopardy as well.
Yeah, right. Like it's fun. It's a skill set, you know. And so what we have to do is we have to take that, and I find as I get further and further in my career, I'm less and less tolerant of any kind of BS at all. I select clients who are doing good work and need the boost, right? That's where I like to spend my time. But even if I'm with a client, let's say who's neutral, not a bad actor, not a great actor, just something happens, I will say to them, well, but what's the defense to that? You know, because when I hear that, I can believe this, and I want to make sure that that belief is founded on something factual. Because if it is, I'm not a part of that. So you can spin that the sun is brighter than it feels to people. You know, you can spin all kinds of things. But if it's based on perception and emotion and all these other factors, then it's spin. It's meant to distract and to deflect and to refocus and all that kind of stuff. But it cannot be a lie, and it cannot be fake, and it cannot be misleading to the point in my mind where it does any kind of harm, right? So if you get 4 people who do a survey, instead of saying, oh man, we only got 4% out of 100 people who did a survey, you can say, you know, we got 4 really good ideas out of this process, and going forward, we hope for more robust engagement, and we will do more to make sure people are aware of the survey's capacity to make improvements and to create better value within our awesome organization. I mean, there's spin right there, right? That's fine. We didn't say we got more than 4, and we didn't say that we got a perfect result, and we didn't say that we didn't need to do more work. We just made it sound like it was all good. Okay. That's fair game. But when the lies come into it, to me, that's a no-go.
See, and the perfect example of that is what happened in New Brunswick, when they said we had 150 letters from parents saying, hey, we have this thing about trans thing. And then somebody put in a FOIA request. Yeah. And then they gave 3 letters like this. And one of the 3 was about children wanting to be animals and using litter boxes or something like this. And then we found out a couple of weeks later, well, there weren't even those 3. They just wrote those 3. Like, that's a lie. It's an outright lie.
Journalists. That's why they're trying to get rid of journalists, because who's going to do that thing of geeking out and getting the freedom of information request and dedicating hours of their day to find out how many letters went to that board? I mean, that's the problem. And I was telling this to a strategist the other day. Yes, we do geek out over cocktails on this stuff at Punta Canada. And one of the things that we talked about was, I said, it's no longer qualitative. It's quantitative, because there's nobody there to track down the quality of things. So people are coming out with these huge claims and this absolute stuff and nobody's there to say, well, wait a second. Was that really a qualified research project? Was that really a rigorous scientific process? Was that really a proportional representation? Was that statistically significant? Nobody's doing that anymore. It's just absolutely looking at it and saying, forget the quality. We got this quantity of whatever. We got this quantity of tweets or responses. Doesn't matter if it's rage farming or it's bot farms. Therefore, we have what we consider the justification, even though it's based on bullshit. And it's important so who's going to do that work? You know, we all have to get in the business of asking for FOIs now. You know? Yeah. So amplify the journalists that remain, support the indies who are actually doing the hard work. We've got one guy named Joey Coleman. I got to give him props. He does on the record for the record. And his thing is that he actually goes to every council meeting and actually records everything and actually writes it up like a trained journalist that he is. But he does it as an independent. And the city of Hamilton spent, I think it was $500,000 or some ridiculous amount, maybe let's even say just $50,000 for sake of argument, on a media center to put in restrictions so that he wouldn't qualify to be there. I mean, madness, right? So we have to support independent journalism to suss out what is true and what is BS. Mm-hmm. You know, it's brutal. And I just got to say one thing, since we're into all this stuff, guys, that parents' rights garbage. Okay.
Oh, garbage.
Garbage.
Because it's not all parents.
Well, not only
parents who are okay with it, their rights. We're not talking about that.
Right. For a whole host of reasons, it's bullshit. The label is bullshit. Just like I said to people who were calling it the Freedom Convoy, I said, I'm not going to say that on air. They're not representing freedom. And why give them a label like that? So this parents' right thing, let's just say right now, since we're doing comms, that's a bullshit misnomer label. It's intentionally It comes out of actually the far right in the US, and it's been going there for 30 years. So know what it is. It's garbage. But here's the proof. Right after the parents' march in Hamilton, where kids are jumping on the flags and stuff, there were like 16 bomb threats called into Hamilton schools. So talk about fear, and within 24 or 48 hours, right? I mean, absolutely no condemnation from the provincial education minister. I know he's come out on some things, but this parents' rights movement is just another way of saying crushing the rights of some so that I dominate, right? It's about crushing rights. And if people don't get that, then they're not paying attention. So I just want to call that out as a parent, or even non-parents can call it out. And we all see the bullshit that it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, when we're doing
I just say, not all the bomb threats were attributed to parents' rights, but one of the ones that they tracked was around some of these issues, some of those narratives that came up. So all I'm saying, I'm not tying all the bomb threats to the parents' right movement. What I'm saying is that destabilizing, that attacking schools, that going after school boards, the shit we saw in Vaughan, it is not inconsequential. It's not just a bunch of people who want to make sure their kids don't have to learn about sex ed in grade 3. That's not what is going on. And I just want to make sure that we see that.
Yep. I fully concur. Now, you said that was going to be your last F-bomb. Oh, yeah.
Oh, did I?
One thing quickly. There was a comment earlier in the chat about how there were never litter boxes. There's truth to that when it comes to the province of New Brunswick, and that whole false story about how they have litter boxes in children's schools throughout the United States of America. So for kids who think they are furries.
Yeah, it's all garbage.
Okay, the furry part is not real. The litter boxes are. Do you know why?
Cats?
No. When they have an active shooter drill or there's an active shooter in the building, children get afraid. And what happens? They lose control of so they have a litter box to go in without having to soil themselves. That's why they're there.
It's dignity.
Wow.
Trying to give the children a little bit of dignity in an insane moment in time. Because when I hear about, they have active shooter drills, I'm like, for children in elementary school and primary school?
Yep.
It's mind-blowing to me because that is not something that is a real thing in this country.
Well, the bomb threats are. My son's
bomb threats are.
Bomb threat. We get them all the time.
And I know it's changing. It's changing, and it's sad.
It is, absolutely. I'm sorry, you were talking about my F-bombing too much?
Yes. No, not too much. You said it was your last one, and I think I'm going to make a liar out of you because the next subject, I think, is going to draw a few more out of you. And I apologize. Well, I don't really.
Don't apologize.
Don't really apologize, but I apologize. Because on your show and in your tweets, I know that the issue of homelessness is something that's very, very important to you.
Yeah.
And in parallel, we have everything that's going on with Doug Ford, and there's a lot of resources in terms of time, energy, effort, money that are being dedicated to a whole bunch of other issues that could be dedicated to this. And I know you feel passionately and deeply about this. So if you've got them, let them fly. But there's a series of events over the past while that has led me to conclude, and because I have to use the word allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, that the current government of Ontario is allegedly the most financially, criminally corrupt one in the history of Canada. There was the reversal on the Greenbelt lands, and now we're finding out tons of other stuff as a result. There's stuff that's been going on specifically in the Hamilton area with regards to land swaps. We have the Ontario Place thing where Mayor Olivia Chow had some type of deal but reversed herself. And really I've been hearing it's like 50-50. 50% of the people go, oh my God, you reversed yourself. I cannot believe this. Wow, does anybody stand for anything anymore? And then the other people said this was on a practical term, was a move of strategic genius. She got Doug Ford's wallet. And we are talking about a certain amount of money, right? We're talking about, I think, if I remember correctly here, $750 million for 55 new subway trains for TTC's Line 2 on the Bloor Line, $330 million over 3 years in operating money for the Eglinton Crosstown and Finch West Light Rail Transit lines, $600 million in additional operational support for shelters and homelessness, and the re-uploading to the province of the Gardiner Expressway and the Don Valley Parkway, which are sinkholes, which could free up some money for housing projects. All of this doesn't cover the $1.5 billion dollar budget gap, and cities in Ontario are not allowed to run operational deficits like the province or like the federal government is. So they have to balance their budget, which means that there will be a tax hike of some kind. And then there's maybe, consideration that the $500 million parking lot, which is the thing I know that sets you off because they were going to build it originally underwater, might be moved across the street because there's plenty of parking at Exhibition Place on which they can build a structure, which would be way less expensive than building underwater, which could free. But conversely, like with that, at the same time, a third track is while this was done, then there was a whole bunch of legislation that was passed. For example, the therm part was like not included in the environmental assessment and will not be. And then the Minister of Infrastructure was given municipal zoning authority, and then Mikey Ford was given the opportunity to. And it seems that the objective here is to try. I mean, they already had a backhoe. It's like they're so anxious to do this that they couldn't even take a chainsaw to an old mature tree. They were doing it with backhoes. Apparently, there's supposed to be some type of agreement with Indigenous groups to try to repurpose the wood, and I don't understand how you repurpose the wood when you take a backhoe to chop it down. I don't know how you make like 2x4 lumber if you're just splitting the tree up all over the place. But it seems that the strategy now is to try to spend as much time, money, and resources in getting as much of that thing built as possible before they lose the next election, so that the next government can say, well, gee, we can't reverse it now. And I'm thinking like, well, why the hell not? Because Doug Ford ripped those electric chargers out after it was done. It's like the next government, I don't care how far they go ahead with it, stop it and reverse it. And now the Ontario Science Centre builder, the old one that apparently was condemned, now might still be able to stick around for some science programming, but to be done within it. But they're not doing anything to actually maintain the building, thus making sure that this building that was built for 100-something years, that's only 54 years, goes down the tubes. There's so much going on. And there's a homeless. Like all that time, all that money, all that man hours of legislating, of advocacy, like this,
the lawsuits.
it's not going to where it should go. The money is not being spent on us. We are not the priority. And then Calandra, the icing on the cake, goes to another development dinner. I wonder how many envelopes went to an aide there. I'm not going to say that they did, but seems to be a pattern. There seems to be one play, and it just gets repeated different. Like everything that this man has touched should just now be just looked at, because I'm sure that the corruption goes to pretty much every deal he signed. It blows my mind because it really is just a fire hose of deviousness and duplicity. And all of it is, wait a minute, the first person you're giving an apology is the developers?
The billionaire,
Not the people whose public good you tried to steal away and hand? Laura, come on.
But beer. We're getting beer in the corner stores in 2 years. Come on.
2 years. In 2
2
years.
years right before the election. Who figured? So here's the thing. And I feel you. And this is the moment in the conversation that I have every day where I have to, and I'll be having it with my clients in a meeting in a little while, I'm sure, where we all have to get that off our chests, take a deep breath at how incredibly overwhelming it feels to be in the presence of what has been found to be prioritizing the financial benefit of some over the right to dignity and survival of others, right? So all those cases that you brought up, all those things, there is a common thread that has been borne out in investigations in the Auditor General's report that just came out, the second one in the Greenbelt report, and to your comment off the top about, your allegations, allegedly they look like to you to be the most criminal, or, we'll find out. The RCMP is investigating them, and that is no small thing. And I'll certainly be asking Kathleen Wynne about it when I talk to her a little later today, because she sat in that chair. And
yes, she knows what it feels like.
I can't wait to hear what she has to say about all of it. But there is a thread that we have seen, a thread that says, you know what, break a promise to the people and pull lands out so that developers and land speculators can make a billions, right? Break a promise to the people so you can enrich billions. They blame that on process. And yet then they pursued a process with the Ontario Place Therme Spa, a 95-year secret deal, a $500 million parking garage for a spa. Really sounds more like
it's a spacino.
It's a casino. I call it a spacino. You're right. It's what they've always probably wanted, is a casino on that property, and maybe this is part of the deal. But what we do know, we don't know about the casino, it looks like it. What we do know, though, is that deal, that very deal, the business case that was put forward, the Auditor General said, what? This is no business case, right? So what we do know is that they threw up a fence and went ahead and started to chop down the trees, probably thinking that was what was really getting people fired up, like the green belt. So get the trees gone and people will. Actually, Keith Leslie, Queen's Park journalist, said on the Osho scandal panel that, if the trees are gone, then the fight will be gone from the people in terms of defending Ontario Place. But what we're seeing is example after example after example, from the MZOs that are being awarded in the hundreds that used to be for things like a helipad on a hospital variance, being given to people who want slices of land. Like, we're not crazy. We're not conspiratorial. We're not making this shit up. It is, I think, the biggest scandal in Canadian history. The Greenbelt, it started off with that weird stag and doe where it didn't smell right, and it blew up and blew up and blew up. I liken it to Icarus flying too close to the sun. Ford is Icarus, and the PC party thought that they could fly and get everything, and they went too close with the Greenbelt and blew the whole thing out of the water. So, we are going to see continual revelations, and we're going to be distracted with things like easy access to beer and whatever else worked for them in the past. But in the past, they didn't have a galvanized Ontario. In the past, they didn't have the kind of traffic that I get on social media of people. Every single thing about the Ford government almost goes, viral, because people are so upset now and engaged now. And it is now clear to me that it is a choice between the dignity and the humanity of our neighbors and the enriching of the wealthy class in this province. And
it's almost like uploading the public good to them.
And let's just put a fine point on this, because this went nuts. When the Auditor General came out and, surprise, surprise, Doug quit, said shut down Queen's Park question period until after Family Day for 9 weeks.
And fired the Auditor General to put a new one in.
So why? Because in that report it said that, and so this is why I'm a cynic, I guess, but I don't think it's accidental that our healthcare system is underfunded. And then we see the Ford government outsourcing nursing, poaching nursing and outsourcing it, selling it back at 3 times the cost to the taxpayer. Yep. Those nursing agencies benefit. Look who own them. I don't think it's an accident that they made it hard to sue long-term care homes when they got in. Look who owns the long-term care homes in this province, right? I don't think these things are accidental. I think that if you starve a system, or even starve the science center to the point where it has to be demolished so that they can have that land, whatever it is, if you starve something, right, you get to a point where then you offer the solution, and people are so desperate for the crumbs that they'll take the crumbs, right? And so we are seeing that. We're seeing a starving of our public assets and our public structures in this province. We're seeing the enrichment of privatization in the private sector. I mean, it's right in front of our face. I'm not making allegations. There's been multiple reports on this. And
they're not even subtle about it anymore.
They're not subtle. So what we have to look at it and say, okay, what's the motive? Who benefits, to go back, bring our conversation all the way around? And am I okay with that? I was driving
Mm.
from downtown. I had people in my car the other day, and a young woman, I didn't realize her background. We drove by a ton of tents downtown Hamilton, and it was a cold, miserable day. And she said, Laura, why are there all these tents? Because she hadn't been downtown. And I said, oh, well, because, there are no room in the shelters for homeless, blah, 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 blah. I tried to explain it to her. And she said, I grew up in a homeless shelter with my mom and my 3 siblings. Why can't people at least get a shelter to live in? And I looked at her, and honestly, my heart broke. And I thought, what a perfect question. How are we not able to even give a barn shelter for Joseph and Mary and the baby?
Yeah.
We can't even give them shelter. There was no room at the inn, but at least there were little barns that they could access to. I don't believe in the, it's a fable, but the point of it is that we can't even let them use our barns. When I was in Italy this summer, and I was talking to people about homelessness in Europe, because I was fascinated how all the different cities were using it. And one activist in Italy was in the paper and said, no one will go without food in Rome because there's always a slice of pizza. Any restaurant, they can walk up and get food, right? And at the Rome train station, which brings in people from all over the world, you know what they do? They don't push out the homeless, force them into tent encampments, then push those encampments further out of sight. They create a room in their train stations in Rome where people can get a shower, they can get some mental health support, they can get a charge for their phone, which is often their only lifeline, right? So it is a decision to have homelessness.
Yes.
It is a decision to have a lack of affordable housing. It is a decision by Ford to reduce rent controls so that people now, the homeless population, are seniors who were living in poverty but sheltered, who no longer can. So this is not immigrants flooding our shelter system. Don't fall for that canard and blame these immigrants who are welcome to this country and we need in our economy. This is not providing the housing stock, getting rid of rent controls, not supporting the homeless, not supporting abuse, people who are struggling with use and abuse. We're not doing those things by choice in this province, and we are instead prioritizing the energy and time of our government in large part, and I'll include in autism families who have been terribly underserved. This government's values have been made clear. They value privatization, enriching the private sector. The RCMP hopefully will follow the money, and if anything illegal is happening, then charge them. I'm not alleging illegalities. I am saying it is a values decision for the Ontario voters. It's don't be swayed by a buck of beer or a license plate sticker, right? This is about, do we still value that the dignity of everyone is the dignity of ourselves and our society? And if we don't, if we just want the wealthy class, and I'm not suffering, I own my own business, right? I drive a nice car. I'm not sitting here saying I'm some sort of person who works on the street with people in homelessness like I'm some kind of fucking hero. You got me on an F-bomb. I am saying this because if we can drive by them every day, and just say, oh, they just need to open shelters, the government's going to do that, it'll be fine. Not this government, not from the evidence we've seen. So, if you care, then you have to get involved. And I say to people who say, well, I don't care about politics. I say, well, they care about you, right? So you ought to care about them. And, if you think that these people are going to be rescued, look at, I said on the latest O show on this, when I was talking to a city councilor, I said, for people who are voting against all these affordable housing measures because of NIMBY arguments or voting against homeless shelters because of bullying, wait 10 years. To see what it's going to look like in our streets and our cities, to see the level of poverty, to see the absolute erosion of the middle class in this country, right? So we have to fight for people who, as my refugee neighbor said, the poor can't get poorer, right? The rich can always get richer, but the poor can't get poorer. They absolutely need us to shelter them. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Without shelter, and I have a great episode of the Osho coming up with an expert on this. And he talks about the fact that rest, to start our conversation about how was your mental health, how was your rest last night, Grizzly? They don't get rest on the street. There is no rest. Imagine ever trying to transition out of homelessness, which is possible, when you can't get rest because there's no shelter. Right. I mean, in a German town, they have these pods that are just set up where people in homelessness can just open the pod, lay down. It's got solar heating, it's got fresh airflow, and it sends off a signal to the local social service agencies that someone is occupying the pod and needs intervention. we have the technology, but we don't have is the political will. Don't say we don't have the dollars for it. We do.
We do.
The dollars
We do.
into parking garages at fucking a spa. Okay, so
And-
that's
and-
why it makes me crazy.
And the opportunity cost or whatever is like by not spending the dollars there, how much more are we spending?
So it is 10 times more expensive, 10 times more expensive to have someone live in a shelter than to live in social housing, right? 10 times. And then if they're not even in a shelter, if they're on the street, it's like $56,000 a year just for the emergency room and the other costs associated. So what I try to tell people is even if you don't care from a sense of humanity and common humanity, care about the dollars. Your residential taxes are going up because we are trying to support people in crisis instead of supporting them in health.
It's like if you are a pure selfish capitalist,
Right.
you should be for this stuff.
Yes.
Yes, basic income, universal basic income was a conservative policy to save money, right on taxes. But Ford got rid of the basic income pilot when he got in. He broke a promise. I was on a radio panel with an activist who's trying to reduce poverty, and I saw tears in their eyes the morning after Ford's first victory because he knew that the other guest on the show knew what this portended for Ontario, you know, and 7 years later, however long it's been, where are we?
And when you consider all the things he's reversed himself on,
I know.
I guess the one thing he has not reversed himself on is a reversal, his first reversal on keeping the UBI program to see it through. That's the one thing. He's reversed himself on Greenbelt. He's reversed himself on funding a French language university. He's reversed himself on, there's an article that appeared, like there's about 7 or 8 things he's reversed himself on. But the one thing he refuses to reverse himself on is the UBI.
And why is that, Douglas? You said it earlier, because we'll fight for trees, right? We'll fight for language rights and equal access to university. Are we fighting? Are we fighting for the people who we can easily dismiss as having made poor life choices or having addictions or, you know, wanting to be on the street? We're not fighting for them. So there's no need for this government to reverse policies around rent control and homelessness because where's the fight, right?
Well, let me get real here for a few minutes, if I may. There are millions of Canadians in this country who are one missed paycheck away from being on the street. Millions.
Yeah.
I, until very recently, was one of them. And very recently, let me back up the story so I'll give you a bit of background. So I work in IT. I worked in construction, building the stuff for 29 years. And my job position changed, but I started a job with a company that had good benefits, and I'm still technically with the same company, but we got bought out by a larger company. So at the start of just before the pandemic, my old 18-year-old Pontiac died, and I had a $500 a month vehicle allowance for my job because I needed a car to get from client site to client site. I took care of audio-visual installations. I was no longer in the construction field, but I was still building things. So the car dies January 30th, 2020. I go out and lease a Honda Civic. And I got a Honda Civic because it's fuel efficient. It's the most reliable vehicle money can get. And it was the least expensive I could get and be reliable and fuel efficient, right? So 4-year lease. And then the pandemic hits and I'm out of a job. We all got laid off. And I sent an email to Honda saying, look, I know this sounds terrible, but I don't have an income now. They're like, no, we get it. We understand. We'll just push the next 4 lease payments to the end of your lease. So don't worry about the next couple of months. Because we thought, 2 months and then we'll be back to work and everything will be fine.
I knew that was not the case because I've been through the HIV crisis.
Well, I was back to work in June. But I was back to work at 80% salary because we were on CEWS. So 75% from the government, 5% from my employer, and no vehicle allowance. So there's money that I'll never see again, right? I'll never see that again. So I'm having to borrow money to keep my head above water because I'm earning at 20% less, plus I have no vehicle allowance and I have to drive all over the city of Ottawa to do my job. So then a year later, 2021, in the spring, the company gets bought out by a larger company. I'm like, okay, it's a 5-year transition. It took less than a year. So now we're fully absorbed by the new company, but they don't do vehicle allowances. So that's gone. So my income has been reduced. I went from a 37.5-hour week to a 40-hour week for the same income. So I'm working more for less. Okay. Let's establish all that. As time moves on, things are getting more and more expensive. It's becoming more and more difficult for me to make ends meet because my vehicle, between lease, insurance, and parking, was $700 a month. $500 of that is no longer covered. It's all out of my pocket. So let's fast forward to this summer when I was visiting my sister and brother-in-law, and my partner was with me, and we were having dinner, and I was talking about how, well, it sucks to be poor. She goes, "You're not poor." I go, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "No, you're not." I go, "Yes, I am." She goes, "You ever missed a meal?" I go, "Yeah, 2 or 3 times a week." She goes, "What?" I go, "Yeah, there are days I go when I don't eat because I don't have the money to buy food," which blew her mind. And of course, my partners wept and was like, "That's never happening again. I'll never let you go hungry." Now, because of where I'm working, oftentimes they have catered meals for the meetings that I support. And everybody's like, "Here, get something to eat, get something to eat." But if there's no meetings, I might not eat for 2 days. Now, I never told anybody this publicly before now, but I thought it was important for people to understand how real this shit is. My situation has changed because a very good, very dear friend of mine who worked in the automobile industry for a long time told me, he goes, "Well, you can just sell your car." I'm like, "But it's a lease. Don't I have to wait till it's done?" And he goes, "No, you can sell it right now." I'm like, "What?" So a $23,000 lease, I sold it for 22. With the buyout, I would manage to put a few $1,000s in my pocket, and now I'm $700 richer a month. I will never skip a meal again. But letting people know, I mean, we're on a national platform, right? There's, I don't know, 150,000 people a month that watch us. It's very, I'm not embarrassed to talk about this, but it was something that I was struggling with talking about for a while. But I need people to realize how fucking real it is for most Canadians, millions of us. I was one missed paycheck away from being on the streets. Now, my family wouldn't let that happen, but I would hide it from them because it's embarrassing to say I can't even support myself.
I'm so glad you said that. I think the number is like 50% of America lives like that. But you would know that, right? From all of the Escalades and the big buildings and all the big trips everyone takes on their Instagram. And I just have to say, you're striking me right in the heart because we have, my kids have some friends who are right on the cusp of homelessness. And they are in homes that are already in deep poverty. They don't have heat, right? They have all kinds of issues going on, and they are looking to leave home as soon as they legally can. And they have no job skills. They're quitting school. And I talk to them every day and say, where will you go? Because you will be seen by predators as being an unhoused child, and there's not good options. And I try to talk to them about it. I try everything I can. And when they come over, I always say to my kids, "Did you offer them food?" And they'll say, "Mom, they've eaten." It's like 8:00 at night. I go, "Did you offer them food?" "No, Mom, why would we need to?" I'll go up to them and I'll say, "Do you want a bowl of spaghetti or stew?" And they're like, "Yeah, I haven't eaten all day." Right. Yeah. And I keep saying to my kids, you can't understand it because you haven't lived it, but these are your best friends. And what they tell me, what they share, they are children who are not getting fed and they're not the homeless numbers. They're not the shelter numbers. They are the couch serving unknown homeless across this country. So to your point about not being able to eat, people who saw you setting up your audio tech would think that you were doing just fine, right? We don't see it. People don't want to talk about it. They want to live in shame, and there's no shame in the game. When we are all coming out of a pandemic where our entire workforce was disrupted, where we have no more rent controls, where we have governments who are prioritizing the wealthy advantage over the humanity of other Canadians. So I applaud you for saying that, for putting that right out there. And you know what? We need to talk to the people in our lives and say, how is it really going? How is it going with work? How is it maybe you tell me what would have been helpful for somebody to have said to you to help elicit the fact that you could need support? What would have been a cool way to engage with you on that conversation? Because I never want to step over people's bounds or dignity, but I also don't want to be blind to their circumstance.
I don't know because I kept it hidden because it was a shameful thing. Look, for decades, I'm very open about the fact that I have ADHD, anxiety, and depression. Yeah. I kept my depression hidden from the world for decades because the first time I tried to talk about it in the 90s, people would say, "What's the matter? You got a good life. You got a good job. You should be happy." I'm like, that's not what depression is. Yeah. But because they can't see it like a broken arm or breast cancer or it's a hidden disability. I don't even want to use the word disability, a disorder, a hidden disorder. You cannot see it. Now, because I have this, I'm on medication now, and I've been doing much better. And irony of ironies, I did without medication for years, because back in the 90s, I tried Paxil and I went out of my mind on it. And I had every serious side effect there was. I went out of my mind, and I almost went over the edge. Thankfully, I didn't. And I'm glad I'm still here, and I'm happy to be here. But just before the pandemic, it was February 28th, 2020, and I was at my wit's end. And it was 2 days prior, I had been at a charity fundraiser at the Lone Star over here on Saint Laurent Boulevard. And it's a thing a friend of mine used to do every year, and we used to go. And I showed up, and there was photos taken of me that night, and I look 10 years older than I do right now. And I'm 55, so that was like 3 years ago. I was 51, because my birthday's in July. So I look at those photos, and I knew I was in really bad shape. Like, it took every ounce of strength I had just to get on the train to go there. And all day long, I was like, am I going to go? Am I going to go? I sat in bed and I'm like, I have to go. It would probably do me good. I got there, and I looked terrible, and I felt terrible. And I spoke to a friend of mine who's a physician, and she looked at me and said, how are you? I'm like, I'm not good. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do. And I think I'm going to have to try medication, but I'm really worried, because the last time I did, I almost took my own life on it, and it made me nuts. And she said to me, she says, well, I'm currently on this medication. You should try it. It has worked wonders for me. And here's the thing, Paul, if you do it and the side effects are too much, you can just go off of it and everything goes back to normal. I went, well, that's all I needed to hear. I needed to hear it from somebody that I love and trust, but was also in a position of personal experience, A, and B, a professional, an actual doctor. Tell me this. So I called my doctor on Monday morning. I called my doctor. He said, come in tomorrow. I went in the next day. He put me on Zoloft immediately. 6-week ramp up period. So 0 alcohol. I don't smoke, and I don't smoke anything. I don't take drugs. My only drug has been wine, whiskey, and beer. None of that for 6 weeks. I'm like, no problem. He goes, really? Is that? I go, it's not an issue for me. I don't want to. You tell me not to, I won't. It's that simple. I do not have an addiction. I don't have an addictive personality. And during that time period, my mother was calling me every day, because she knows I've been open about my depression since Robin Williams took his life. I said, okay, when that happened, I have to talk about this, because I might be able to help somebody. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional here thinking about all this. It's a little overwhelming.
It's so helpful, though. I mean, you're helping so many people. I'm not reading the chat, but I can tell. I can feel it.
Well, I'd like to hope so. But
You are. I'm reading the chat.
When my mom would call me every day, how are you? I'm going, Mom, I'm fine. She goes, really? And I go, this medication is working wonders. I go, yes, I'm concerned about the world and what's going to happen. And I was genuinely, I think, for the very first time in my life since I was a child, I felt terror when the whole world shut down. And the terror it wasn't immediately about money. I was like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? Well, I'm sure we'll figure something out. I'm a little concerned. I was concerned about two things. I just leased this car, and can I pay my rent? My mom's like, don't worry. We'll cover your rent if you need to, we're going to make sure your fridge is, I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that, but let me figure it out. My terror is the world collapsing? Is this the end of the world? And I was like, I was genuinely afraid. Since the first time since I was a child, I felt fear. And it wasn't for me. It honestly wasn't for me. It was for the millions of people who are marginalized and outside of the margin. For the people who don't have a voice, for the people who are on the streets, what is going to happen to them? I was terrified to think of what might happen in this world. Well, thankfully, we had a prime minister in charge who was an adult and took charge and took care of people. And I have lots of friends who are progressive conservatives, old white men, part of my Scotch and Cigar Club. These guys are all in their 60s and 70s. And they all said he did the right thing at the right time. It was the right move. They don't like Trudeau, but they do like a lot of his programs. And they said that is what saved millions of lives in this country. And then the other programs, CEWS, the loan program that they gave, like bridge loans that you don't even have to repay to keep your business afloat. I shudder to think what would have happened if Pierre Poilievre had been in power. We're conservatives. We don't believe in big government programs. He would have let us wither and die. And he wouldn't give a shit about it.
And so right now, people are withering and dying. On the O show that I have coming up with Rashad, he talked about somebody who died outside of a homeless shelter in Mississauga because of the cold a couple of weeks ago. So right now in Canada, in our largest cities, and we're one of the richest nations on earth, we're number 2 to live in the world, according to a new index that just came out. There are people like yourself who are a couple of or one paycheck away from skipping meals. The food bank usage is over 300% rise in 2 years in Toronto, right? Why is that? Because people like yourself would have to start using the food bank. And, God forbid something happens. I'm a private contractor. Something happens with my business. Where does that go? Where's my job security? My husband's a union employee, but what happens if Poilievre takes apart the CBC or the pension plans or anything else? Like, none of us are in a position, in my mind, where we have the right to think that we are better and that we are impervious, and that the people who are without food or who end up on the street or in the food bank lines that I see downtown Hamilton now in the parks on Saturdays, which were never there before, I'm not better than them, right? And so I should be fighting with everything in me to make sure that they are transitioned out of homelessness and into affordable housing. I should be pushing for, and I have been, a wartime housing effort, and I've been pushing Trudeau's government everywhere I can, and I was thrilled to see that they're actually doing it now, and they do it fast, right? But I love you telling your story today. I don't know how long your podcast goes, guys. But I think
it's Friday. We can go for hours.
It's important, though, because you're someone that people would look at and say, he's got a successful podcast, and he's a white male, and he's intelligent, and he's obviously got a high technical skill set. Of course, he's fine, right?
Yes, that's what everybody would think.
Right. They would think that, but it's not the case. And so if you don't have access to people who are honest about their circumstance, or don't live in an area like I do, I'm across from social housing. And as I said, there's a lot of poverty adjacent to our street, where I'm talking to kids who are at risk of homelessness right now. And if you're not having those conversations, and listen to those people like yourself who are bravely sharing those conversations, and realize that we have to demand of our government. If the pandemic didn't teach us, if the rampant homelessness isn't teaching us, if the privatization of our healthcare and having ERs closed in towns across Ontario, imagine having your partner have a heart attack and you can't get them to an ER because it's closed. I don't know what I would do. I don't even want to think about what my temper would do in that circumstance. I mean, we are accepting these announcements around beer access in I grew up in Quebec. There was beer in the corner store, big fucking deal. It's not what I want my government focusing on when there are people dying in the streets. What is fucking wrong with us? If there was a flood that hit Ontario, a massive earthquake that hit Ontario, and we had 30,000 people who were suddenly without shelter and homeless, we'd be setting up emergency tents. We would be putting them in our empty armories and in our empty city halls on the weekends. We would not leave a single head unsheltered. But now we have boiled in the pot of this kind of situation where we don't recognize anymore that we are in a crisis level emergency DEFCON 1 situation, and we are just driving past it to go Christmas shopping. I can't. So I just hope that Ontario, I called it, Ford, that he was, what's the word, bamboozling us, which means, to deceive or to frustrate or to fool. I don't want to hear about beer when I am watching 1,600 people freeze to death every time I leave my house on the street. I can't go for coffee at Tim Hortons without seeing someone in a tent huddling for warmth. So you brought it up, Douglas, I think the reason why homelessness, other than the just raw humanity of it, the fact that none of us are too good to think that we couldn't be there in 2 weeks because of an illness or because of, some job issue or something like a pandemic, we're all vulnerable. To me, it's the juxtaposition. It's the stark relief between a $500 million spa with my money for a parking garage, or taking $500 million of that money and building tiny shelters and affordable housing units to get people off the street. I mean, if we were all like, if gold was pouring from the sky and it was like the heady 80s and woo, peace and money and boomerism and all that shit that was making everybody feel like they could have a Maserati. If those days were back, then okay, you know what? Go for it. Build a super spa with bullshit numbers like the Eiffel Tower gets annually in your business case.
Go nuts.
Go nuts. But not when we are still in the tail end of a pandemic. As my friend said yesterday at lunch, you know, when you go out and you do an all-night bender and it's like you're horribly messed up, and the next day you get the greasy spoon breakfast and you hope that by the next night maybe you can go out again. We haven't even got to the greasy spoon breakfast on this pandemic. We're not even there yet.
No.
4 a.m. trying to get people out of hospitals and get people out of drug overdoses and find our friends. Like, we're still in this horrible, traumatic place, you know, and we are letting our government act like it's the next night at dinner and everything is fine. We're not fine, and we can't spend our resources on bullshit when people are going to die on our streets. Like, it's so, to me, that's what gets me crazy. Is I've always cared about homelessness to a level, but I've never cared about it like I do now, because now every single thing that everywhere we go, we see people suffering. And when we see governments spend money on frivolous garbage to enrich themselves and their private sector buddies, like, it's like, no, absolutely not. You know, no mas, we're done with that shit. So I hope that everyone watching this podcast across Canada understands, like, this is not isolated to Hamilton. This is in small towns. This is in every province. Healthcare is being gutted and privatized, you know, and if you got the cash, great. You're going to have a fabulous life in Canada in 2030. But if you don't, there's not going to be any way to access even basic justice and equality in this country at this track, right? So
I need to get something for you. Please. Just hold there. I'll be right back. Just give me 2 seconds while I run and grab something. You're going to like this. The kids will love this.
Speaking of kids, I got to get them to school at some point, so I got to jet soon, guys. They're used to their mommy talking, and they can tell when I'm not shutting up, so they just leave me alone.
But it's true that you mentioned. Oh, okay, he's already back. So
that was fast.
So let me get my earpieces back in here, Ms. Babcock. I need to present you with your blue jacket.
Oh. What is this about? Tell me. What's a blue jacket?
It's kind of how we got to. We went national in a way.
I love it.
Get out of my fucking city! And the thing is, get out of my fucking city! Hey, fuck you! There's a lot.
Oh my God, I love that. It's like balcony guy.
Yeah,
he was on the balcony going, fuck you and fuck you. And I love it.
That's me.
Yeah.
That was me.
You? Is that you?
Yeah.
Good for you, dude. I remember that. I didn't know that was you. Oh my God. That's so awesome. You know, because all that stuff, like, you know, so I just leave on this idea on the grievance and the trucker bullshit and the anti-vax, all that stuff. I'm sure there are good people of good heart who are getting caught up in the grievance politics and the all the nasty trash we were talking about earlier. There are people who are being manipulated, and I don't think they're bad people for being part of that convoy. What I do think is that more of us need to do what you did and stand up and say, like, this is not cool. You know, I hear you're upset about the pandemic. So am I. You don't like vaccination protocols. Understandable, even though I think that, you know, that's living in a society, you got to step up. But get your fucking truck off my street, because kids can't sleep. I'm losing my mind, and it's unfair. And you are actually terrorizing a neighborhood with this week after week. And it's not okay in Canada, not in my Canada. Like, I'm not seeing
in the poorest neighborhood in Ottawa too, by the way.
But, you know, I'm not giving up the Canadian flag to that cause. To garbage. Not a million years, right? And so,
no way.
And so I love that you did that. Good for you. I'm honored to be associated.
It wasn't planned. It was not planned. Yeah, it was very spur of the moment. I was standing there on the sidewalk talking with my neighbor about how we need to organize our building, because I'm on Metcalf Street, and we thought we have a bunch of senior ladies that live in this building, and they decided they were going to lock arms and prevent the trucks from coming in on the Saturday morning. And I said, that sounds good. And then the idiot in the big rig pulled his horn and blared it for, like, I don't know, It might have been a minute, might have been 5 minutes, but I looked at my buddy and I said, I can't handle this anymore. And I went and I pounded on his door. And to this day, I am thankful he rolled his window down that much, because I was at my breaking point. I hadn't slept in days. I was at my breaking point, and had he rolled his window down the entire way, I was pulling, and it was in my mind, he's coming right out of that truck, which would have it probably harmed him irrevocably, and definitely would have destroyed my life. So I'm thankful he didn't roll his window down more than an inch, because I had snapped. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And innocent people were being harmed, and they were going, well, we don't like this. I go, what? You think we liked being let go from our jobs? You think we liked that we were asked to stay home? You think we liked I couldn't go to the pub for a beer? You think I was happy at the fact that when my father was in the hospital and was on death's door, I couldn't go and see him? They talked about how it was, we couldn't do this. I'm going, neither could I. And that's why I lost it. It's like none of us could, but we're fucking adults, and we sucked it up and did what was good for our community. It's not about me. And you know what it was? It was for the very first time in their miserable fucking lives that these cis, het, white, top of the privilege pyramid people ever had to give up their privileges for a split second. They couldn't fucking handle it for just a few weeks. They couldn't deal with it. How do they live in the real world? How do they live in the real world? Really
well said. We lost 8 family members during the pandemic. My mom was one of them. And funerals we couldn't go to. I lost, the amount of grieving and non-community and the suffering that we all went through collectively. And the one thing we could do to prevent further suffering was to get a 2-second needle. And, I said many times, for all the shit I put into my body in the 90s, really? You're going to make the argument that you don't poison yourself all the time with other stuff. You can't put in this thing that could save lives and protect people. I mean, but I think you're right. Privilege, losing any kind of privilege. And so I love that. And I'm glad for your sake and for their sake that the moment didn't escalate. But I think there's somewhere in between that kind of, I don't ever support or promote violence on any level. Violence is never a means to an end. It's a means.
Oh no, I'm a pacifist.
It's a means to.
I'm a pacifist.
So what I do think is really important, though, is that we use our voices that powerfully, and we use our ability to capture video and to share video and to speak about it and unpack it like we did here today powerfully. There is a non-violent resistance that has to be mounted in this country to what we got a taste of in that convoy occupation, right? And it's not about demonizing the people who were participants. I always put the blame on the leadership. Always.
Oh, yes.
Who were the leaders who walked with that convoy, Pierre Poilievre? Who were the people who gave it cover? Who were the people who normalized some of the symbols that we saw? Who were those people? And they own empowering that movement. Who are the people who are saying these parents' rights things are okay? Who are the people who are supporting or giving a wink to anti-trans language and to all this other garbage? You are the ones who are empowering others to think it's okay to behave in these ways, right? So that's where I leave it, gentlemen, as I leave it on as residents of this country, this great land. We need to fight for our flag. We need to fight for our values. We need to fight for the goodness that has always been Canada. I mean, we've done terrible things as a country. I'm not saying Indigenous people anything other than horribly, and I'm not saying that we've got a great track record. We don't. We've got a lot of issues.
Let's own that.
Let's own it.
Let's own that and move forward.
And move forward, right? Not shut ourselves off from the conversation, not be too afraid to talk about difficult issues, not be afraid to stand up to the hate and the threats that we get. For voicing, I get them all the time, right? You're not going to get me to back down over my fucking dead body, right? Because I have privilege and I should use my voice of that privilege. I shouldn't complain. I should try to support other people who don't have even the capacity to complain or be heard, right? So we need to push for better governance, for better government. And I just hope that federally, provincially, whatever province you're listening in, understand that the stakes are not about which political party has their turn at a double majority and which provincial party should then counterbalance that political party. We're not talking about small game anymore. We're talking about the difference between a society that gives everyone an opportunity to have dignity and shelter and food, and a society that is moving away from those basic fundamentals. and that's very alarming to me. So, guys, you've been amazing. I do have to get my daughter
Yes.
to
Thank you.
school, so I gotta go. But I love this conversation. I had no idea how long it would go, and I've never met either one of you, and I haven't read the chat. But you guys are awesome. Is there a way that I can post it in all of my my places later?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely.
When we put it, the live show will be up, and then we put out the podcast a little bit later. So there's an ears only and the eyes and ears version.
Well, if you ever invite me on again, I will live
Oh, yes.
broadcast on my platforms. I saw the opportunity to and didn't click it because I wasn't sure what we were going to be doing. But
Understandable. You don't know us, so
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
I
get
feel
it.
so honored that I do now.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
well,
you.
The honor's ours. Please, thank you. I
I
mean,
really
you're an important voice. You're an important voice in this country for democracy, for fairness, for helping to build a society and a community that we all want to live in, that we can all lift each other up by.
Well, I'm back at you. I think everyone who's engaged in this chat, when they had other things they could have distracted themselves with this morning or gotten to, they are all part of that as well, right? It takes,
and they're all wonderful people.
it takes a village to stop an autocrat, right? It takes a village to protect democracy. So, to everyone, all of you, thank you. It's been an honor to be a part of this conversation. I look forward to looking at it all later.
All right, and thank you so much, Lauren. As you mentioned, powerful voice. Thank you for using yours.
Anytime, guys.
I'm a fan.
But back at you. We're going to subscribe to this pod.
Thank you.
Go take care of your kids.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Oh my God, I love her. I love her.
Oh, wasn't that awesome? That was awesome.
I thought that this was going to be awesome going in.
Mm-hmm.
And she is so much more extra than even I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's the thing. We never know, when we're meeting somebody for the first time, we don't know how the conversation will go. We don't know. You have, you'll form sort of expectations in your mind.
Wow.
I think this could be fun. Way better than we expected. So yeah, thank you, Laura. I hope we imparted or impressed upon you that we care about this country as much as you do, and that we want to do our utmost to make it a better place for everybody.
Wow. I really hope this becomes our most viewed episode.
I hope so.
I hope so too. For anybody who's newer to us, who might not know me as much because Mr. Grizzly shared, things are good for me now.
Mm-hmm.
Now.
They weren't always, though.
Right. But something I would have wanted to get in with Laura if we still had more time, and maybe we'll do it on another show, is the thing that I like about her is she cares about people who are invisible to a lot of us.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons that we talk about ODSP a lot. And that's the one we're more familiar with because we live in Ontario, but disability supports anywhere, right? Because disability, as our guest, Melissa, when we had her on, said, it's the great equalizer. Everyone's an accident or medical event from being disabled. And then they're in the same boat.
One catastrophic event.
So many of us, like you were saying, we're one paycheck away. So many kids are one moment of sharing truth with some of their parents from being kicked out of the home.
Or worse.
Or that sets them up to be exploited and trafficked. I was a foster child, for those who don't know. My child of a single mother, and my mother's schizophrenic. And anytime she had a psychotic episode, I would go into a foster home. Yes. One of the reasons things are good for me now is because up until I graduated from university, I lived my entire life feeling that I did not have the luxury to fail. Not even once. I'm not allowed to make a mistake because there was nobody there to pick me up. And there would be nobody there to pick me up. And one of the populations that haven't been talked about and that we haven't heard about throughout this whole crisis are foster children. We've talked about the disabled. We've talked about the homeless. Foster children. There's not been one article that I've seen, not one news story nothing in the last 3 years about how all of this has affected them.
Nothing.
Just-
Not a mention.
I tell you often that I've got money in the bank to make sure that I know where my next 10,000 meals are coming from. Why is that, though? Fear. Fear that my adult life would be anything like my
your
childhood. It was the one thing that I had, the one life force that I had driving me. Fortunately, as I say, the universe gives us all something like this. I was given a brain, an ability to take tests well, and I did really well in school.
And blessed with not having the mental health challenges that many of us face.
And blessed with, even though I had a mother who had mental health challenges, the one beacon in my life is I knew she loved me. I was convinced of it. So when everything else was going wrong, when anything that can happen to you in a foster home happened, and it happened, all of it happened. All right? How do you get through it? It was the love of one person who taught me that the best thing you can do yourself is just get your education, and from that point on, you can be whoever you want. But the reason that I have a little bit of money in the bank, that I have savings, is because for the first 25 years of my life, and then even after that, even at I graduated university and got my first real job, I was still living like a student for the next 6 or 7 years. I would not spend any. I could be late for something. I would not take a taxi.
Right.
I would take my hit to my reputation rather than spending an extra $7 or $8, because what if that $7 or $8 was the difference? I now don't have to worry about that. But for about 32 years, that was my primary concern every single day. It's not a life.
No.
It's not a life. And you would look at me now and you would never know.
No, of course not.
As Amanda Marshall has a song, everybody has a story that will break your heart. And that's why Mr. Grizzly often says, be kind, give a smile to someone. You do not know what burden someone's carrying. And sometimes you can't tell by the hairstyle or the quality of clothes that they're wearing or the job that they have, that they are on the verge. So I just wanted people to know this. We are two schmoes. We're doing okay. I'm doing better than okay. But it wasn't without a lot of work. And for some of us, the motivator was not, hey, I want to have a big fancy car. It's like,
no,
I don't want the rest of my life to be like all of my life has been up until now. That's fear. That's terror as a motivator. It's not a life.
I think so. Look, my parents are still married. I'm close with my two sisters, and I'm very, very lucky that I have a very loving, caring family. But I need people to understand something, and I've talked to my parents about this and my sisters. I said, look, I know you love me, but depression takes away your ability to feel it. Like, you knew it was in your bones. You knew your mother loved you.
Yep.
I know that they do, but I don't feel it. And that's what depression robs you of. It robs you of it. So even though I know, and the problem is your emotional mind and your analytical mind. And the analytical mind would say, don't worry, Paul, your family's there, they'll take care of you. But the emotional mind, which is what depression rules and throws the analysis right out the window, is that you're on your own, bud. You're on your own. Nobody gives a shit. And I talked about it at the top of the show. I was hungry at work the other night after working 12 hours. And I 12 on the 13th hour, and I was thinking, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. They don't care about me. All this hard work I've put in, here I am, no food to eat, nothing. They're not acknowledging the efforts. I get a bite to eat, and that went away. So even on the medication, you still need to get proper sleep, proper hydration, and proper food into your belly.
Mhm.
Because I literally at a job that I love and people that I love working with, I was thinking everybody hated me, all because I was tired and hungry, and that's when the depression crept in and tried to tell me terrible things about me. So this is what I've lived with my whole life, right? And since starting the medication, the voice pops up once in a while, but it's not like it once was. I have love in my life now. I have a partner.
Oh.
Took you forever to notice that, man. I do the jazz hands every day.
Your jazz hands are sometimes out of screen. Ooh, when did that happen?
We'll talk about it on the weekend during the pubcast tomorrow.
Oh my god! Oh my god, I'm so happy. You know I love love. You
Mhm.
know I love love. Oh, Mr. Grizzly, I am so, oh, Mademoiselle Fox, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Oh my god. Oh, that brings joy. Oh, that
You have
brings
no idea.
joy.
See, I'm at a point in my life where, financial struggles are still there, and they will be for some time. But I've eliminated an expense, and I have more money coming in, and I can take care of a lot more things, and I'll never be hungry again. But I have love in my life, and I know I have a family that loves and cares for me, and I feel it probably for the first time ever over the last 3 years. Something I never felt before, all because of this. I don't want to call depression a disease. This disorder, this brain disorder that I have, has never allowed me to feel it, and now I do.
Oh my
So,
god.
yeah,
Oh, I'm so happy. These are tears of joy. These are tears of joy.
I know.
Oh my. Oh, my friend. Oh, my brother. And you know I love you.
Oh yeah, I do. I know.
Like,
I know.
I think. Oh, what a beautiful way to end the show. Oh my word. Oh, okay, kids. We have a show because this is the perfect note to end on. I hope that you loved listening to us because oh my god, we love making this one for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little verklempt. I'm, uh,
I gotcha.
oh, holy crap! Oh my god, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. But I'm at a loss for words. I'm so happy. Because sharing is caring. Please let your peeps and poops know all about us. Your word of mouth is priceless. And means the world to us. The gift of your attention means the world to us, and all of you that stayed here from beginning to end of this particular episode that you didn't check out at some point, or like I know some of you had family things and work stuff like this, but oh my word, gee, so please share. If you want to write to us, True North Eager Beaver at gmail.com. If you don't want to miss an episode, thanks to the Ray Girl, somebody whose help we are deeply grateful for. Please scan that squiggly and go to podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. That way you don't have to miss an episode. When we have something fresh straight off the bandwidth, it comes right to you. Our YouTube page, like, share, subscribe, go there. Thank you for helping us to hit 500. Again, the love. You are all wonderful and amazing people. The joy you've brought into my life and the love. I am just overwhelmed. The Squiggly by Mr. Grizzly's Head is our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. If after you've taken care of your gifts, taken care of your family, and have done some good for the world, if you have a couple of pennies or loonies or nickels jingling around and you want to offer them to us to help us do what we do, thank you. Very, very, very grateful. And again, the person who did it 2 days ago, I'm sorry, I just got so wrapped up, I forgot to bring the thing up, but we will thank you. Because democracy is something that you do, Write those letters. Remember,
Mm.
National Food School Program, the homeless, the disabled, foster kids. Vote for something bigger than yourself. And
Yes.
don't vote for assholes. Don't vote for assholes.
Please. Please.
So get your XBB shots. Keep the hospitals unclogged. There are people who are living on the street that will probably need to access them. Let's make sure that they get a fast response time. Whatever you can do, every bit counts. All right. Donate to the Red Cross. There's a lot of people whose lives have been upended this summer, and they need your help. From the Beaver Lodge, this is your Iggy Beaver saying, until next time, dear kids, have a great weekend and be kind to and gentle with yourself and do something nice for yourself. Right? We're talking
Yes,
about
you've earned
we're
it.
talking about doing stuff for others, but make sure that you're okay. Right? Put your own mask on first.
Mhm.
Right? Do something good for your soul this weekend. Mr. Grizzly, some words of wisdom, please.
Yeah. Where do I go from here is the difficult part. My buddy always used to say, eat first, because you can't concentrate on an empty stomach. So let's hold the Russian asset that I believe Pierre Poilievre to be. Let's hold his feet to the fire over not wanting to feed children and not wanting to support Ukraine. Because this man who doesn't care about children and doesn't care about people who have been invaded by a hostile nation, how do you think he would govern this nation? So let's hold his feet to the fire.
Yeah.
I know this is self-serving when I say please share this with everybody you can, but it's important that we get the message out to people that a lot of the people in government today hate you. And they rely on you being stupid because they will speak to you and talk down to you like you're stupid. And some people buy into it. We're here to make them get the refund on that purchase they made. Because guess what? They're lying to you. And they're manipulating you. And they're doing so for their own purposes so that they can put themselves into a position of power where they can do more lying and manipulation to you. Welcome to the new feudal system, kids. Please support your feudal overlord, Pierre Poilievre. Well, I don't want to live in that world, so let's not do it.
Yeah.
Let's not let it happen.
All right.
That's all I got to say today.
Mr. Grizzly, roll them credits.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community and forum, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from fresh farm ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind.
We have some comments from the kids that are saying, let me know the date. I want to be there.
Tomorrow, Saturday, December 16th, 2023, 361 Evan Street.
I see what you did there.
Lieutenant's
Pubcast tomorrow. And hi, Jazzy. See that she's I hacked Mohan's phone. Lovely to see you. And kids, just so you know, I kept track, and I think I managed to drag 4 more F-bombs out of Laura after she promised. So my work here is done. And Miss Sadeka, I see that, and yes, we would love to have a voice clip of Mateo saying, have a nice day. Or maybe Mateo, Jazzy, and Rain. Why not all three? Okay?
There you
We'd
go.
love to hear from them too. All right, kids, have a beaverific weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.
And if you can, join in tomorrow.
Yes, sorry. We will see you tomorrow.
For the pubcast.
Yes, we will see you tomorrow.
That was the wrong one.
Oh, by the way, I'm on Dean's show this afternoon too, so check into that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Where'd our pubcast go? I don't know. There it is. Found it. Welcome to the place where everyone knows your name, where everyone's your friend, where good times are had by all. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a beverage and enjoy our company. I know we'll certainly enjoy yours. Welcome to the True North Eager Beaver Pubcast. Once a month, we gather at the Lieutenant's Pump at 361 Elgin Street in downtown Ottawa, Canada's capital city, bringing you joy and happiness all day long. I have, we're still live. I have one more clip actually I want to share. I don't know if you've seen this, but oh boy, are you going to love it. It's 2 minutes and 18 seconds of fire. Now, let me just cue this up here. And kits, cubs, folks, friends of folks, folks of friends, enjoy this. Whoops. It helps if I put it on the screen, I think. If I do that, it works better. Here we go.
Oh, we talked about it.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm out here to tell you that I am not going to indulge yet another one of Mr. Poilievre's temper tantrums. Today we were supposed to be debating Bill C-50, an Act on Sustainable Jobs. It's the same bill that the Conservatives tried to move 20,000 amendments to last week at committee. They failed to do that. And so we were supposed to be debating this. This is a bill that talks about Canada's future. It's about making sure that we have a strong economy for the future. Canada right now is ranked third in the world for foreign direct investment, and it's because that we understand that we have to fight climate change, protect the environment in order to build that economy, and quite frankly, the world is moving in that direction. But last night, Mr. Poilievre and his Conservative members of Parliament put 198 amendments to an 11-page bill on the order paper. That would trigger another night of marathon voting. And why? Because he is ideologically opposed to fighting climate change. He is hell-bent on bringing American-style extreme right-wing politics that have created chaos and dysfunction in Washington to Canada. And so instead of entertaining his little temper tantrum, I'm going to suggest that he takes a little bit of a timeout. We're just about to move into the holidays, and I think it's a good idea for Mr. Poilievre and his Conservative members of Parliament to go home, cool down a bit, take a break, talk to Canadians, real Canadians, and reflect on, I won't even say childish, because I don't want to insult Canadian children, because quite frankly, they behave better than most Conservative MPs, but to reflect on their politics of obstruction and their irresponsible actions of this session.
Well, my friends, that is what we in the industry call a mic drop.
Love her. I love her.
Took him to the woodshed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All
Don't
right,
mess with
kids
the
and
mom.
cubs. It's time for me to go.
Right.
I will see you tomorrow. We're going to be live at 1 p.m. 1 to 5. We can't go past 5 because there's a 6 o'clock book. It's Christmas time.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I was happy where, and it's going to be in the same space I did it last time with the rock background, just because there's going to be a couple of surprise guests popping in.
Excellent. And kids, unfortunately, I'm not on Casual Friday this week because I have a hot date with my beaver sweetie. So.
Oh, is Casual Friday still on? I haven't seen it.
It hasn't been for a while because James has been away, but yeah, there is one tonight. I won't be there,
Oh, okay, good.
but I'll be at Pubcast tomorrow. Right?
Cool. See ya.
Bye.